Welcome back, you jack-offs. We're going to continue doing what we were doing before. We're on Hoth, the Jedi Consular. And we're reacting to this Diary of a CEO. Let me subscribe, actually. Roundtable on World War III, potential World War III scenarios. So, where we left off before, we were talking about the protests in Iran and the potential Trump administration intervention in those protests and some of the actions that the Trump administration has taken in the past regarding Iran. What is the right, geopolitical posturing with Iran? And looks like now they're going to be talking about, let's see where they go from here. So what happens next with Iran, I believe, or is it with Israel? Kind of cuts off. So we talk more about Israel, it looks like, and then we're going to talk about what nuclear weapons, China and Taiwan. All right, so yeah, let's hit it.
There's this ceasefire, but it doesn't look like a great ceasefire.
There's a crisis of legitimacy that this current Islamic government has to reckon with domestically. They have to now look at their people and say, okay, we basically failed to defend you. That they're trying to spin that narrative, saying that they did defend the homeland, and they're trying to use nationalism as a sort of a salve,
nationalism
as a treatment to justify or to explain or to sort of wash over what happened. There's going to be new leaders. The supreme leader right now is frail. He's been frail. He's been on the verge of death for years now, setting aside attempts to kill him. And the crisis of succession, who comes next, is going to be now amplified much more, a greater sense of urgency. And then whether or not the next leaders of the Revolutionary Guard, which is sort of Iran's. So just to explain something, Iran has two militaries. There's the Iranian military that protects its borders and domestic security, oddly enough. And then there's the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is protecting the revolution. The R in IRGC stands for revolution. The I does not stand for Iran, it stands for Islamic. In other words, they are protecting what happened in '79. They are not interested in the country. That's what the army does. The army protects the country. The IRGC protects the movement. And so the IRGC is the most powerful entity in Iran. And who their next generation of leaders or next level of leaders that rise up, what their views are they willing to cooperate with the rest? Are they going to double down on nuclear enrichment? Are they going to take things underground? Are they going to kick out the IAEA permanently? Are they going to pull out of the NPT? We don't know the answer to these questions. And what's the public unrest going to be like? Can somebody emerge? Because you cannot have resistance without a movement led by, a figurehead of some kind. And this regime has been incredibly good. The last few days, they've executed 3 or 4 potential people who they think could emerge as
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
They killed 3 or 4 people.
About 3, I think. Three for sure. There's a 4th. I'm waiting to get confirmation. Yeah, people that they're afraid of, who could use this period of instability and dysregulation to foment rebellion and insurrections. The last thing.
I don't remember
this
area.
But in here, and you're going to correct me if
one of
I'm
these
wrong,
updates.
but if we were in a different presidency and a different era, like, this is where the CIA would be in Iran and would be fomenting change, because that is ultimately what the American goal is.
Which is absolutely should not be done. Ever.
We're
It
barely
did it in
doing any damage to
53.
this guy.
But
And by
I
the
didn't
way,
say it should or shouldn't.
no,
I'm just saying it would have.
Meaning
But
not
you think so?
not should or shouldn't from a moral perspective. It just simply doesn't. It doesn't work. For this to have legitimacy for decades to come, it has to be organic, homegrown, free range, grass-fed.
The agency can sometimes hide itself so dramatically that it's not even known it's there.
Iran is
We
not.
want your opinion, but that's where
Iran is, and again, I say this as a very proud Persian. Iran is different than I think other theaters of conflict where the CIA has operated. Iranian civilization and nationhood goes back thousands of years. It's very different. It does not take wealth. It's not like Iraq, which is a fabricated state. It didn't exist until 1917, 1918 after the Sykes-Picot Agreement, or, the modern Middle East is very different. So
I do agree. I mean, this is an issue that you have with, like, just being like, let's just oppose their leader and put in someone who's sympathetic to the West or whatever, is in these areas, same thing with Palestine, you can't just oppose their leaders, put in your own, because the people themselves will eventually revolt against that kind of leadership. they won't see it as legitimate. You have a legitimacy crisis, which will rear its head in one way or the other. They're not aligned enough, and the culture's too far from where our culture is for there to be enough support for that to be a viable solution. So that's another part that makes it kind of difficult and complicated.
So you want metal in the Middle East, fine, but Turkey, Egypt, Iran, these are nations that have existed for thousands of years. That's a game that the United States intelligence agencies, and I would add MI6, the UK, hasn't figured it out either.
Andrew, what do you think happens next in this region? Are we going to reach peace? Are they going to form an alliance with the US?
So I'm smart enough not to debate, because I am largely ignorant on the political divisions and internal politics of Iran. And I know that CIA has very little idea of what's going on in Iran most of the time also. And I am suspicious that a big part of why we went in at all was because Netanyahu and Israel said, here's the intelligence that we have. It's a very common game in the world of intelligence.
That's interesting. I mean, if what he's saying is actually true, and again, he said that he used to be a CIA agent himself. When I say agent, maybe that's not the right word, but someone who worked for the CIA. For him to be saying that, submitting that the United States doesn't have good intelligence in Iran is quite an admission, because I think generally we assume that the United States has such a good intelligence network and allies with intelligence that we kind of have like a really good idea of what we're dealing with in every country. And especially a country like Iran, where we have such a huge interest in geopolitics there. It's quite an admission to say that we really don't, our CIA, our intelligence agency, doesn't know enough to actually have like a lot of certainty with respect to that region. That's interesting to hear.
If you have 80%, if you have 100% of knowledge, you're only going to share 20%. And you're going to share the 20% that benefits you.
Do you think that's potentially what happened?
I absolutely think that's what happened.
So you think Netanyahu and Israel could have given selective intelligence to the United States to provoke them to get involved?
That's it. It only makes sense. It's what a professional intelligence service would do. It's exactly what the United States does.
And you don't think the U.S. knows that, though? They're only getting titrated amounts of information?
No. I think even if they did know that, Netanyahu understands the Trump mentality of horse racing.
That's yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it's going to come down to
the world of intelligence
the dumb
is a
fucks that run the Trump administration.
nasty game. We call it a gentleman's game, but it's not at all. It's a game of twisting people's distortions and cognitive dissonance and playing into biases and politics, and it's a nasty, nasty game.
So what happens next?
What I think we need to be prepared for is that nuclear weapons are not becoming less likely to be used. I think the traditional World War II nuclear weapon, the ICBM that's targeting a civilian population, that is...
Yeah, what we're probably looking at is what you would call tactical nukes used on the theater of war. And a tactical nuke has usually like a smaller... I don't know what you would refer to it, not a payload, but like a smaller... It'd be a smaller nuclear bomb than the ones used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I believe. Let me double check this and look this up real fast. Yeah, they're low yield is the right way to refer to it. Tactical nuke versus, what is it called? Big boy? Little boy? So little boy was 15 kilotons. Tactical nukes are modern battlefield-specific weapons with varying, often lower yields, sub 1 kiloton to 50 kilotons. So they can be larger than the ones used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they can be significantly smaller. 15 kilotons would be the ones used on like in Japan. And tactical nukes could be not even 15 times smaller than that, but even less, sub 1 kiloton, so sub 1,000 tons.
Is less likely to be used. That is possibly full-on unlikely to be used. But a dirty bomb?
What's that?
A dirty bomb being a
too,
60% enriched uranium deposit that's triggered through some kind of explosive device.
And to cause
that's
like
dropped off in a car trunk or dropped off in a suitcase. That
It doesn't have a weapon system.
But it
It's
just
not like an
radiates the
engine.
air.
You drive a truck in and you just explode it's like a radioactive dirty
Bomb.
bomb.
It
It
basically
causes
calls
like,
like
a
EMP.
radiation cloud to hover above a city or a small area. Right. What about
That's what terrorists would have.
what about tactical nukes?
And tactical nukes, I think, are also something that we're very likely
Yeah.
to see. Since the end of World War II, what we've seen is an increased investment not in intercontinental ballistic missile warfare, but in tactical nuclear warfare. Tactical nuclear warfare are warheads that are as small as 50 pounds. And those can sit on the end
Oh
of
shit.
a...
So I was saying less than well, I don't know. The yield versus the actual size, I think they're not exactly the same thing. When we say kiloton, I think what we're doing is we're using like an equivalent unit to, I think, TNT. Like, what would the equivalent blast of it be in terms of how much TNT? I believe that's how we measure them. So, like, when we say, what does it mean when we say kiloton nuke? A kiloton nuke refers to the explosive yield of the nuclear weapon equivalent to the energy released by detonating 1,000 tons of TNT. Yeah, so it's not actually like the weight of the nuke itself. It's what would the blast of that nuke be with respect to TNT. Like if we were able to produce that same blast with TNT, how many tons of TNT would that work out to? So when he says 50-pound nukes here, I don't think he means the yield, the blast, like energy rating of that nuke. I think he's actually referring to like the nuke itself, the warhead is actually like 50 pounds. Like it's very small. I think that's what he means by that.
Short distance rocket, a medium range rocket. They can be put in a backpack and put on a drone for all intents and purposes. And those tactical nukes have a very small contained explosion, but it's still a nuclear explosion. And the reason the tactical nukes are so valuable is because now you can use them against military targets. So what
Yeah, so when he says you can use them against military targets, the idea here is that you're not just bombing an entire region haphazardly, I suppose, but you're almost, it's like a hammer versus a scalpel. With the tactical nuke, you're like using a scalpel. You're targeting something specific. You want to contain the amount of damage to outside areas. And also, I mean, we don't want to have just like radiation all over the fucking place, right? So if we want to limit how much radiation we're putting out there, and we just want to use that tactical nuke to take out a specific military target without incurring other damages outside of that. We want to contain, what we're damaging, what we're doing, the fallout from it.
Totally. I gotta take, like, can be used against, should never be set, right? So that's my line in the sand. Tactical nuclear weapons are no longer in the U.S. arsenal for precisely that reason, because they cannot be used, because the escalation to strategic weapon.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is, I was kind of thinking in my mind, like, a tactical nuke by itself may not be that bad. It may not seem that bad, right? It's lower yield. It's going to be a more targeted strike. You're maybe only using it to take out specific targets, military targets usually, or that would be the intended purpose. So why is it bad? The reason that it's very scary compared to regular conventional bombs that might have the same yield is that there is a threat of escalation, that if you're wielding tactical nukes and actually using them out in the field, there's like, okay, the next person to use a nuke is going to use one that's a little bit bigger than yours, right, to kind of make a show of force. And the next person uses one a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're ratcheting up to the point till you get to nukes that are like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You're ratcheting up to that point where you have nukes that are now spreading nuclear radiation all over the globe and potentially plunging us into a nuclear winter, things of that nature. We don't really want to get there.
Nuclear weapons, which is one continent to the next, big systems, big delivery systems, is inevitable. But keep going.
You're saying it's a slippery slope.
It's
It's not a slippery, it's a dividing line. You can't even enter into the slope.
It is a slippery slope, but yes, I mean, it's both, right? There's a dividing line. You don't want to enter into the slope, but yes, there would be a slope.
It's like if you get pushed off a cliff, there's no going back. It's not a slope, it's a cliff.
So you're
in my
It is a
understanding
slope, but-
of nuclear war games, and everyone at the Pentagon knows that.
There's a semantic argument. It is a slope, but she's describing a slope. She's saying that the slope is going to be rapid. It's going to be almost as if the slope is like fully vertical, And that's an assumption to a certain degree. but it's a pretty fair assumption to make.
No matter how nuclear war begins,
The severity's too
it
high
ends
to
in
gamble
total
on that.
annihilation, which is why America no longer has tactical nuclear weapons in its arsenal. We used to. We used to have small nukes that you could put in a backpack and jump out of an aircraft, and I know people who rehearsed that during the war.
We can definitively say the U.S. has none in its arsenal,
We
or
do
none
not.
that we know
No,
of.
no, we don't. Now, you could say that the ones on bombers, because we have a certain kind of one nuclear weapon that is on that can be flown in, and it can be its size can be dialed down, and that makes it tactical.
Why have we got nuclear bombs then at all if we can never use them?
That's the
Because I'm saying,
fundamental.
you're saying we can't
deterrent.
have tactical nuclear bombs because if we would never use them if we did the world's over, basically. So why do we have nuclear bombs? Because the same principle applies.
We
Because you
have
have nuclear bombs. I
we
have
have
So we
nuclear
might as well have
bombs.
to.
Yeah, this is subtle, but it's a good question to ask. How would I even describe this? How would I describe this? It's. I think the idea here is that the smaller nuclear bomb, the tactical nuke, it has the false sense of security that, oh, I'm just using a smaller one, but that temptation to use the smaller version is going to escalate towards those larger versions versus holding just those larger versions. There's a much higher kind of threshold of you're willing to actually break that glass to use it. I think is. Let me see what they say actually.
The tactical ones.
Absolutely no, and I do believe that's one of the wise moves of the U.S. nuclear command and control.
Because the tactical ones will lead to the big ones.
1,000%,
We're
not even
getting-
100%.
yeah.
But if that's
1,000%.
true, then why have the big ones?
Well, that's the bigger question, but our position on why we have nuclear weapons is one word. It's called deterrence.
Yeah.
We are going to deter
But you
you
could say the same
from
thing about
using
tactical
your
ones, right?
nuclear weapons against us because we have an arsenal and you have an arsenal. It's this bizarre catch-22 paradox.
So she's not doing a good job describing it here. I don't blame her, but as you saw, even for me, I had to think for a minute about how to actually like phrase it, word it in a way that is easy to digest and understand. But I think that is the issue: is that tactical nukes are a little bit more tempting. They have a lower threshold of like commitment to actually go ahead and use them, but then they wind up escalating up towards those larger ones. Versus the larger ones have that. It's like, I guess a good analogy would be a hair trigger on a gun. A hair trigger on a firearm is that it takes very little pressure for it to go off, which means that it's very easy for you to have like a misfire or whatever. Versus a heavier trigger, you have to genuinely, consciously commit to pulling and putting that amount of pressure to actually get it to fire, right? That's the difference. A tactical nuke is like a hair trigger. It's easier to pull, it's easier to deploy, but then once you do, you're ratcheting it up to that heavier, payload versus if you only have the larger nukes, it's like having a 10-pound, I actually don't know. I don't know if 10 pounds is like standard. Whatever the heavier trigger is going to be, you really got to commit, and it's going to take a lot of like conscious determination to go ahead and do that than it would for a
That's why
tactical
we
nuke.
can't get rid of nuclear weapons.
We're now
We-
seeing where reality and policy butt heads. Because Annie's right, the policies on this are clear as mud, but they are stated and restated over and over again in order to get the American populace, the American people, to be able to stomach the fact that we have all these nuclear weapons, right? The fact that we put our nuclear weapons in 5 other countries around the world, right? Belgium is sitting there holding our nukes. Italy is holding our nukes.
Making them a target.
And giving them a nuclear weapon in their own border.
Which they
that we
can't
control.
use, which they cannot use without the President of the United States authorizing it. So it's
According to our-
very precarious.
Think about that, by the way. When Trump threatens to invade NATO, and NATO has the adequate response for them would be trigger Article 5 defensive. Now they're all against the United States. They're probably going to take their bases back by force, right? Which means they're also going to get access to those nuclear bombs against us now. So when Trump engages in that kind of rhetoric, that kind of behavior, it's not a small thing. It's a massively destructive thing that he's engaging in, and Republicans and Republican voters, conservatives and whatnot, they are tolerating a degree of escalation that's absolutely 150% absolutely unacceptable. And we've allowed that behavior to become normalized. It's 100% unacceptable. This shit is so massively fucking dangerous. And we've become way too accustomed to it.
But who would be able to use it if they wanted to?
So here's every weapon is different. Every weapon is different, and I say this because the truth of nuclear weapons is far scarier than the average person understands, which is a big part of why I believe, like you, they will never get used at a strategic level, because the people who actually handle the weapons, the people that you're talking to, they understand the devastating consequences of these weapons, but
I would never say never. I mean, all it takes is the wrong kind of person with the wrong mentality. Just look at Donald Trump. To have an overreaction, to have an emotional reaction, to think short term, and we are in that scenario. I mean, it's a little bit too sunny and a little bit too much of like a summer child mentality to think that these things will never happen. We have lived through relatively stable times. And if we're not vigilant, we would find ourselves in relatively unstable times where this kind of shit is normalized again.
a person gets very, very confused sometimes. So a small warhead, let's just say 30 kilotons of explosive power, right? Which is still twice what we dropped on Hiroshima. A small warhead does an immense amount of damage. It annihilates 10 square miles, let's say, of wherever it explodes, if it's a surface explosion. If it's an altitude explosion, it doesn't destroy really anything. It leaves an
But it has
EMP
a radiation
that that short circuits wiring, right?
Yeah,
And that can be
and
a
then you have
huge
radiation cloud.
an EMP pulse that destroys everything beneath it.
What is an EMP?
An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. It's a electrical discharge that comes from a nuclear detonation or other sources that infiltrates through technology, wiring, et cetera, and it shorts it or burns out the wiring. So you
Think of like a massive surge, like a massive power surge.
Yeah.
or you can detonate them underground, underwater to create natural effects. You can create earthquakes, you can create tsunamis, you can create vapor bubbles that are just destructive. So there's lots of different ways that you can use a weapon. But the thing that concerns me is that because the US policy is so black and white as it's fed to the American population, it's that much more inviting for one of these other countries to use a nuclear weapon in a specific way to create chaos, to create a lack of clear acquisition. For example, if a small Russian nuke, which lives in Belarus, because Russia puts their nukes in Belarus, finds its way into Kiev and explodes in the back of a truck, who do you blame? Does the U.S. blame Russia? Does the U.S. blame Belarus?
That's another aspect I didn't even consider, is that the portability of these smaller nukes also makes it a larger threat. It's harder to keep track of them and detect them. And like he's saying, you could slip it into an area, detonate it, and then who was responsible for that nuke? It's harder to track, right?
Belarus? Does Russia take responsibility for it?
Which again
Does
makes it more
Europe
tempting
say that
to
it's an attack
use
from the
because you
Russians?
think you
What
can
do
get
you
away
say?
with it.
Because now
But then
you
you're
just have a
escalating
nuke go
up now.
off, and the world's confused. And the same thing happens if China uses a tactical nuke to destroy in the ocean, in the South China Seas. If China uses a tactical nuke to blow up 5 Filipino ships, what is that? It was a small nuclear device that was used in a littoral situation that was only attacking, military forces that were quote unquote violating some sort of free space. What do you do there? That's not when you launch ICBMs. So what do you do?
What happens there, Annie?
That's the nightmare situation. I mean, attribution, or rather non-attribution of a nuclear weapon.
Figuring out where it came from.
Yes, when you
It's
don't,
chaos.
Because if a strategic nuclear weapon is launched, an ICBM, we, the United States, knows precisely where it came from because we see it from our satellite systems in space in the first second after launch. So that is the fundamental of deterrence. Not only can you not launch at us, but we will know in 1 second, and we will be back at you before yours even get to us. That's how it works. But what Andrew is saying is deeply troubling. And another reason to our conversation about why Iran should not have the bomb, or anyone for that matter, It's dangerous enough that you have 9 nuclear-armed nations, who could, as you say, someone could in Belarus could wind up with something. That's incredibly dangerous, but you do not want anyone else into this mix.
Including non-state actors, which would be Hezbollah.
And to be clear, what a non-state actor means is, in the United States, we think of states as like the local provincial governments. But non-state, state in the geopolitical sense, in the more general sense used around the globe, a state is another country. And so when they say non-state actors, they're referring to factions, actors, militants, whatever, that do not, they're not representative of an actual country, an actual like government. They are maybe like a terrorist cell or a like rebel, force or something along those lines. And the issue with that is they're harder to deal with, they're harder to negotiate with. They're a lot of times, how do I put it? Like think about this for a second. A state actor has a country that they are responsible for. They have a civilian population that in one way or the other they are responsive to. Even dictatorships to a certain degree are responsive to their population because they can only go so far before they generate so much ill will among their own population that now they're fighting internal enemies, let alone trying to deal with outside adversaries, right? But if you're a non-state actor, you don't have a civilian population that you are responsive to. You don't have a country capital that another force can capture and use as a bargaining chip. You don't have I guess those are the only two that really come to mind right now. But those are pretty big deals because how do you negotiate with a non-state actor? Who's the representative of a non-state actor? Do they have like an official diplomat? If you wanted to go to war and with the non-state actor, maybe you don't want to go to war, but maybe you want to defend against a war with them. What can you use as a bargaining chip? If you take their capital, they don't have a capital. They don't care. If you are threatening, I don't know if threatening the civilian population is the correct way to put it here, but you can't use like taking over a geographic area and now the civilian population are under your control as like a bargaining chip in that same way. They don't care about a civilian population. They don't have one that they're loyal to. And so here's the issue is when you have non-state actors, they can have any motivations. They can have the most selfish motivations, the most insular, one-dimensional, singular to one person kind of interest, that if they have access to nuclear bombs, I don't know. It's a much trickier world to deal with than if all you're worrying about are countries that have access to these things. And honestly, this might be cynical to say, it's probably not a matter of if, but when that eventuality does happen. Technology only really becomes more dispersed as time goes along, unfortunately. So.
Hamas, the Houthis, if you're Israel, the concern is not so much that Iran will use it, but Iran will provide it to a non-state entity that is not bound by any international law or rules of warfare.
Yes.
And Iran can claim deniability
and that's why
reputation or pressure in that regard.
That's why.
So imagine Israel is one of the 9.
Yeah.
One of the 9 nuclear-capable countries. Imagine this Mossad that is absolutely capable of incurring across Iranian borders, smuggle in a 50-pound tactical nuke, and they take it and they put it inside one of the testing ranges. They put it inside one of the facilities inside Iran, and then they put it on a timed detonator, and 13 hours later it goes off. There's a nuclear explosion underground in Iran in an Iranian facility that we, in this simulation, we know it's triggered by Israeli covert action, but the whole world sees an explosion go off in Iran. So now the president wonders, did they just run a nuclear test? Iran raises their hand and say, we did not run a nuclear test. Somebody put a nuclear weapon in our territory. Who believes who? Right? What does Saudi Arabia believe? Well, shit. Iran has nuclear capability. We're nuclear threshold. Boom, let's get it going.
Yes, you. Too late. I heard you were coming after the regenerative armor, and I've destroyed my notes. You learn nothing.
I want the name of your informant. Now.
You don't scare me.
We're secure. The guards are lost, but 2 of my guys are missing too. We're looking for them.
I claim immunity. Under Section 1138 of your Republic Charter. You cannot coerce or harm a political prisoner.
Uh-huh. But Hoth isn't in the Republic now, is it?
I don't know if it worked that way, but okay.
Rest assured, we are always mindful of the canons of the Republic.
I don't know, Jedi. Hang him up in a Wampa cave and he might start talking.
But you wouldn't dare. You're bluffing.
Enough, Lieutenant. Doctor, helping us could make the difference between being a Republic prisoner or a guest.
Well, I'd want private quarters. With a lab. And holonet access.
I can't guarantee everything, but Jedi recommendations carry a lot of weight.
I didn't expect you to be so reasonable. Now, the armor. You know Valen's armor has a unique healing function, yes? But that function can be overstressed. If Valen was mortally injured several times quickly, the healing function would shut down, leaving him vulnerable.
Can the armor's healing functions be shut down any other way?
No. They are too sophisticated. This is a crude method, but it will work.
Sorry to interrupt, LT. We've spotted a group of Valen's men. They're headed for a scavenger's camp. Should we engage them now or wait for you?
I'm open to your opinion on this.
Just make sure they can't escape and wait for us.
Yes, sir. I'll pass it on.
Wait! Your Republic Charter states prisoners must be cared for. Without my equipment, this lab will soon freeze.
Forget it. I'm down 2 men already. I'm not wasting another to escort you home.
If we ignore the Republic Charter, we're no better than him. You can spare 1 man.
Okay. I'll send someone for him, but we'd better get to that camp.
Just to be clear, by the way, with everything that I've been talking about with like strategy and tactics and whatnot, and compromising for like the larger chess goal and everything like that, I wouldn't, I wouldn't make the same decisions that the character I'm playing is making. I decided to roleplay her as being like the most morally consistent character. I'd be much more willing to be like, nah, fuck you, bro. Like, eat shit. You're gonna have to deal with it because. You know, I've already kind of gone out of my way to help you out and everything, and you're lucky that we're sparing your life. We don't really owe much to you, but she's supposed to resemble the most quintessential, consistent version of a Jedi, so, you know, it's going to be a bit of a Steve Rogers kind of character.
Japan, nuclear threshold. They start getting their program going.
How bad does it look for Iran if it admits that Israeli commandos or agents made their way into one of the most top secret facilities right under their nose?
Yes. Right. So I have a curiosity, which you might know.
You have some
possible theory.
Some sick curiosities. We should share a drink.
No, this is like a terrifying one. Is that after
that was a little bit weird.
October
Tell me I wasn't trying to flirt with her, please.
President Biden
That was awkward as fuck.
went
Hold on.
to Israel
Who
himself.
said that?
This is like a theory.
Some sick curiosities. We should share a drink.
Okay, I don't know. I doubt it. I don't feel like that's how he meant it, but I know maybe I'm wrong.
No, this is like a terrifying one. Is
She was
that
way older than
after
Not
October
that
7th,
you know you can't be into that sort of thing. but-
President Biden went to Israel himself. He did not send Blinken. Remember that? This was in
That was
hours.
a big deal. That was a big deal.
This is in hours. This was not a man who was, out playing football, okay? He goes to the heart of the battle zone. Why? My theory
Went
is
to the
that
danger zone.
he said to Netanyahu, there's one line you may not cross. And if you cross it, we are not friends anymore, ever again. And that's the nuclear line. That is my theory. No one's whenever I've asked anyone, they just don't have an answer. Their lips get very
Get pursed.
and no one says anything, which leads me to believe that is precisely what happened.
There's so much going on around this map that sits in front of us.
Sometimes silence
it all seems to
itself
be
is an
happening at once
answer.
with, you know, Russia and Ukraine, and you've got China, and with Taiwan. You've now got the Middle East going off with Iran and Israel, and everything happening in Gaza. It doesn't feel like this is going to go the other way. It doesn't feel like this is going to retract anytime soon. It's funny because when Trump got elected, he promised to like end these wars, and under his reign, it seems like there's more wars popping up.
Yeah, I mean, I think his overall influence on the world and geopolitics has led to a more chaotic, unstable world environment. These things matter. I mean, Republicans want to pretend that rhetoric and the way that we carry ourselves doesn't matter. You know, might makes right. We carry the biggest stick, so like nothing will happen if we just, you know, kind of bully our way through the world. But they do matter. They change the temperature of the entire globe. They coarsen the discourse all around us, and that coarsening of discourse is like a feedback loop.
And actually, a lot of this causes cover and distraction for other people to start, you know, invading countries that they've got a problem with. And we talked a little bit about international law being violated and new precedents being set in terms of what you can do. We're now at a point where it's kind of okay to bomb a sovereign country. It's kind of okay just to roll across the border and just take what you want. So I think that's where my concern starts. And I'm looking over at the other side of the map here with Russia and Ukraine, and I'm asking myself, how does that end? You know, Putin can't just roll out of there, because then why did he ever roll in? I mean, it doesn't look like Ukraine are going to allow him to take a part of their country. That war's going to carry on. And then you've got China and Taiwan, where the tension has increased. And I think I read that there's been more murmurs of conflict or invasion going on with China in recent times, which would probably be, now would be a great time if you're China and you want to take Taiwan. Now would be a pretty good time to do it. Trump is busy.
I think I said this before Trump won the election, that this is probably going to be more likely to happen now,
where they're practicing or prepping for a amphibious invasion from the Chinese People's Liberation Army onto the coast of Taiwan. And so what has the Chinese government done in the last few days? They have jammed GPS signals. They have launched drones that are interfering with radar, basically, and blocking shipping lanes legally within where they can be. But the point being is that if you're Taiwan, you're prepping for this amphibious invasion that may not need to happen, because China can do plenty to disrupt and make life for Taiwan miserable without even setting one soldier's foot on Taiwanese soil. So absolutely, this is, and meanwhile, the U.S. is busy elsewhere. Look at the missiles that were used to provide Israel, the THAAD missiles that were used to defend against Iranian ballistic missiles. It's been depleted, right? So if you're the U.S. now, you're at a weaker state of being able to defend Taiwan than you were a month ago, 6 months ago.
And there's also sort of a public fatigue, right? Because now the public in the United States, they're more polarized. Even on the right, there's some people that think we should be going to war. On the left, they think we shouldn't, etc. It's getting quite murky. There's a lot of backlash, and I'm sure.
I mean, we shouldn't be just kind of going to war willy-nilly, obviously. But we also need to defend ourselves, and we need to defend our allies and the overall kind of like freedom of the world in general. That's a calculus that you have to run. And so I think one of the bad things that happened with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan is that it generated this reactive impulse from a lot of people to be anti-war, which in a vacuum, in a most general sense, yes, be anti-war, right? But there's conditions to that. That's anti-war with an asterisk next to it. Because let's say we were anti-war throughout World War II. Does that mean that we don't stop the Nazis from trying to take over the world, from genociding the Jews? There comes a point where you do have to like intervene and step in and do something. The question is just going to be like, where do you draw that line? I fall on the side more of like diplomacy and trying to use soft power, but there does become a threshold that for me justifies, you know, military option. And I think to not have that perspective, I think to simply just have this perspective of no war under any circumstance is like a juvenile perspective to have.
I'm sure Trump feels that. Some of his closest media allies like Tucker Carlson and half my Twitter feed are saying he shouldn't drop the bomb, he shouldn't go to war. And I'm sure that stuff gets to him. But Benjamin, you believe, I think, that if there were to be a trigger for World War III, it would come from that region.
I think so. I think we would see it in the form of what we're seeing now, trade war, supply chain crisis issues. We saw during COVID what happens when the supply chain is disrupted. That was a sort of a non-human event, meaning it was
So, unfortunately, I feel like at this point, because the United States is so bifurcated and so distracted now, it sucks. It sucks so much for me to say this. I almost feel like Taiwan's a foregone conclusion now at this point. And it didn't have to be this way. These are like in a different timeline. If we made different choices as far back as 2016, we'd be in a different place. But we've been on a trajectory of a lot of bad decisions that are adding up over time now.
You know, it was a virus, but imagine China now banning the sale of all rare earth minerals to the West, right? These are minerals that are used in the construction of lithium-ion batteries, microchips, processors, things of that nature. And then imagine if China says, look, we're simply not going to sell these things to the United States and its Western allies. Done. We're not going to. What happens then? So I think a major conflict will be precipitated by an economic and trade war, which we're now basically in for all intents and purposes. And until the U.S. can and Western allies can diversify by getting these resources elsewhere, I don't know if occupying Greenland is going to be the answer, or making Canada the 51st state will give us that. But this is where the Chinese are very effective.
I like how we're saying that as if Canada and Greenland themselves are not Western powers. Like, why do we need to occupy these places? We have an allyship with these places. These are places that are part of NATO. So when we say, like, oh, you know, the West is not going to have access to these strategic resources, if we're talking about countries within NATO that have these strategic resources, why are we talking that way, right? These are false premises to be setting up to then later on allow the public to get an idea that we have justification for things that we never really needed to in the first place.
If they have a large amount of these minerals within their borders, we know that there's a good amount in Ukraine, which is why President Trump wanted to make that deal with the Ukrainians to secure those mineral rights. But this all goes back to trade and technology. You don't need to control territory for territory's sake now. You need territory that has something that's vital. Whether it's oil, less so these days, arguably, but now it's rare earth minerals and access to trade routes. That is where you start messing with that, you are then lighting the fuses of war.
Which are already being messed with. Everything that you just rattled off is already in motion. It's already happening. It's part of why I make the claim that World War III is already happening. If China invades Taiwan, if China takes Taiwan administratively, judiciously, militarily, however they choose to go in there, because we keep thinking that they're going to like send warships in and weaken the battlefield with missiles or something. That's not how they took Hong Kong. They took Hong Kong administratively and then just moved in the police after saying we have legal right. That's exactly what they're doing in Taiwan. They even have a parliament in Taiwan that's majoritively pro-China, right? So they meddled with the elections in January enough to win a majority in the parliament, even though they lost the presidency, right? So I actually think we're seeing the same messaging coming out of Europe. If China moves on Taiwan, the world kind of does this, and Taiwan's alone. Not only because the president's distracted, but also because NATO is distracted. Europe is distracted.
Yes.
And the last thing anybody wants is to fight over there.
And a lot of these things, you have to understand, these things are self-inflicted. Why is NATO distracted? Why is the United States distracted? And I hate to be partisan. Well, no, I don't hate to be partisan. I'm partisan because the truth is partisan, unfortunately. We're in this situation because of the overreaction. It's not even an overreaction, it's just the incorrect reaction of conservative right-wing politics in the United States. The impulses were in the wrong direction, and they have been in the wrong direction. They continue going in the wrong direction.
Over here. But the thing is, they don't even need to move in and invade. All they have to do is block shipping routes, which they can do.
Yep.
No one's going to challenge them on that, and basically stop selling these rare earth minerals to every country that wants them. What do we do then? Russia's not selling us what it has. You know, Russia can choose to do the same thing.
Well, that's not going to turn into a kinetic war. The United States,
won't, right? It won't, exactly.
It'll turn into more of what we're already seeing.
Right.
More tariffs and more threats and more trade and more of the same stuff that we're already seeing, which is a big part of why I think we're holding.
That is, I agree. That is the war we're in right now. It just doesn't look like the wars in the past.
I think it was Biden that said or suggested that if China were to invade or take Taiwan, then there would be a war. We'd be in a war.
But
Yeah, and that should have been the stance of the West this entire time. The issue is that, and I think even Obama kind of signaled that was the stance that we had. When Trump came in 2016, people may not know this, may not be aware of this because they weren't paying attention. Donald Trump is one of the people who flip-flopped on this issue and kind of led to kind of a situation we're in now where there is a lot of ambiguity and and how would I put it, like, China is more likely now to do that, not only because the Republicans have signaled so much expressed outward explicit hostility to China, but also because the leadership under Republicans has signaled that we are not committed to actually defending the trade routes in the South China Sea or Taiwan should China try to invade Taiwan. Sort of like having the worst response on all angles to this, unfortunately.
Just stuff them on top, quick. If the pirates see this stuff, we'll never get our cut. We'll... Oh, Jedi, it's not what it looks like.
All right. Explain. I'm listening.
Well, the scavengers have... Look, I had no choice. We're dying by the day, and Valon just keeps going. Valon promised us. Lead his men here, we stay alive. Who's gonna stop Valon? You? You don't have the backbone. You couldn't even give me punishment duty.
If you have insight into Valon's plans, it could save you and your comrades.
No. You keep fighting him, you're gonna get us all killed. I've been saving this knockout gas for a good cause. If I have to fight, I'd rather take someone who can die.
Oh, Private Kree. You're not even like a decent challenge. Well, he really saved himself with his plan, didn't he?
I've got an update. This is big. Wait, is that Private Kree? Was he in on this?
Doesn't look like what you think. Let me explain.
He thought he could save himself by guiding Valon's men here.
Let's hope he didn't give them any intelligence. We've got enough trouble. Our scouts tracked the pirates' trail back to the starship
I don't think he was capable of it.
right to a dreadnought. The thing's a fortress.
I didn't know there were so many crashed ships here.
Some space battle years ago. Republic and Imperial ships both. These scavengers use special gear to get salvage out of the ice. Valon's men went straight for it. I think Valon's planning to raise the old Republic dreadnought from the graveyard. Then he'd have his own flagship.
With his healing armor and a ship that size, every pirate on Hoth would join him.
Yeah, we have to get in there. This'll be rough. That class of ship used heavy security doors as choke points. Plus the scouts reported lots of pirates.
Wait, LT. Jedi, you've put yourself on the line for us over and over.
What if we attack the flagship's engines? Valon wants the ship, he'll have to defend them.
That'll work. We'll keep Valon's... You finish him for us.
No Jedi could make a nobler gesture.
I'm with them, Jedi. Right now, I wouldn't want to be shoulder to shoulder with anyone else. Our radios won't work out here, but I'll send you an alert when we've disabled the engines. We'll join you if we can. Find some way past those security doors and get to Valon. I just hope I'll be there for the finish.
I like Oresa. He's a real one.
It doesn't need to. It doesn't need to. For China to win, it doesn't have to set foot on Taiwanese soil. All it has to do is basically isolate Taiwan economically, trade-wise, and then dare anybody else in the West or elsewhere to do anything about it.
Will they do anything about it?
That's really difficult to see.
Even France, even the president of France just came out recently and was like, you know, if China takes Taiwan, I don't think France is going to get involved.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, again, the president of the United States cucked out and flip-flopped so much on this, and then the president of the United States is threatening NATO and doing all kinds of like weird shit. It looks like the United States is too busy fighting with itself, and this close to designing it in civil war. Like, yeah, we've signaled to everybody on the planet that we're not going to be able to fucking do anything because we got so many issues that we're dealing with internally ourselves and even within the alliances that we have. Like, people don't understand how destructive this kind of stuff has been. It sucks.
Yeah. If
This is the world, by the way, that generations are going to inherit. Generations are going to inherit a world that is no longer under the rules-based order that liberalism provided, that led to an era of unseen prosperity in human history. What follows after that? I don't think it's something better, unfortunately. It's going to be something far worse, I think.
If we in the West can find our minerals elsewhere, I think we'll throw Taiwan under the bus.
And under the Biden CHIP Act, that's exactly what we're trying to do, is find our diversified routes.
Haven't we got some like sworn promise to protect Taiwan?
Yes.
I'll get her any of her
officially,
promises right
yes.
now.
We have a sworn promise to protect Taiwan.
I think that the wild card in all of this is the current
Donald
president.
Trump. Yep.
No one knows how he is going to behave.
Promises,
And
pacts, laws,
I
rules, they
don't
don't mean fucking
really believe
anything.
that there's such a thing as him being distracted. I think that he will put his focus on whatever it is he chooses, and then that becomes the attraction.
Xi Jinping also knows that he needs a win right now. And he also knows that there's a huge economic benefit by...
Well, I'm not really following this logic. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't know why Xi Jinping would need a win right now. I think that they're happy watching the West eat itself alive. While they do decently well. I mean, I think they had some economic issues lately, but let me see if that's still something that's ongoing. China economic 2025. They grew 5%. I mean, I don't know where these numbers are coming. I don't know if these are Chinese numbers. Export performance. They're probably, I mean, they're making deals with some of the allies that we're abandoning now. Like, I don't think so. I think that they're doing all right now, unfortunately. You know, I'm not saying unfortunate for China. I'm just saying, like, unfortunate in the sense that we are conceding ground.
by ingesting Taiwan and Taiwanese semiconductors and Taiwanese infrastructure and Taiwanese capabilities, because all of the United States IP for semiconductors was developed here, and it's all being built there. So when you take that, you get everything there that's a physical infrastructure and everything here that's intellectual property.
Has the probability of nuclear war ever been higher in the last couple of decades?
I think the Russia's invasion of Ukraine a few years ago, and the immediate first few months, I should say the first year, was the peak of the last few decades. I think we've backed away from that a little bit, but I think that was the peak. I don't think more today than, let's say, a year ago, but I think a year and a half ago more so than 20 years prior.
And do you think if Iran had developed a nuclear weapon, they would use it based on those three pillars you described earlier?
No.
You don't think they would?
No, because the regime's not suicidal. Because if they had used it, and we'd be able to track it, they'd be destroyed. And they are a lot of things. They might be crazy, they might be irrational in some ways. They are not suicidal. They're not willing to die for this. They want, like Hitler and the 1,000-Year Reich, they want this to endure. And it's not going to endure with the which is why Khamenei, the supreme leader, maintained a threshold of nuclearization. If you cross that threshold to being a nuclear weapon state, then all of a sudden he has a big target on his back, either from within or from without. And his goal is to have the regime endure for 1,000+ years, not to have it be sacrificed at the altar of nuclearization.
Yeah, I wish people would have understand this kind of mindset when it comes to geopolitics more. Like, especially when we talk about China. Every time they talk about like China going to war with the United States, I just look at them like, how does that make any sense? Walk me through what the logic there would be for China, right? It doesn't really make any sense. So China, their posture is going to be a lot more nuanced than just, oh, we're just going to try to defeat the United States in a war. China is doing well just forming economic alliances with other countries, and that's a much better way of going about their objectives, their goal of attaining global dominance without having to commit suicide, like this guy's saying here. Like, you have to look at what are the realistic motivations behind these actors.
Andrew, what do you think in terms of probability? Higher, lower?
I mean, I will give you a number. I think there's a 30% chance that we're going to see a nuclear detonation in our lifetime. Here's why. Because
tactical, or does it matter?
I'm saying any detonation.
Any detonation. Okay.
The last known nuclear detonation was 2017. If I'm mistaken, 2017 when North Korea did a test. That wasn't that long ago. And there were a series of tests that they did before that. In an environment where testing is not supposed to happen anymore. We are now entering a season of more conflict. We're seeing more and more strong, authoritarian type leadership, even if it's in the lead of a democratic country. We're still seeing strongman type of shame-based leadership. This cognitive
This is
dissonance
all
where
over the
people
globe.
Leaders will go contrary to where their advisors say.
And these kind of leaders, they operate on emotional pill of their supporters. They rely on fear-mongering. So those are all things that are going to ramp up the temperature globally and probably lead to more conflict in the future.
Go contrary to what's
more irrational decision-making.
In pursuit
elect
of some
even
sort
more
of
irrational leaders.
strategic or even tactical political aim. With more advanced weapons, with more transnational threats than ever before. Transnational threats are threats that don't derive from a national identity. They derive from something else, like a drug cartel or radical Islam or radical Catholic role. With the rise of transnational threats, the opportunity for someone to get their hands on something that's nuclear and then detonate that nuclear device somewhere is just too great, and it's only getting greater. It's only getting more. New cryptocurrencies, people can pay for things, and financial transactions can't be tracked as easily as they were in the past. We are definitely in an era where it's getting worse. And I remember people asking me this question 2 years ago, and I put the chances at 15 to 20%. So in just a year and a half, I've literally seen us move the dial, in my opinion, closer to, we will see a nuclear detonation in our lifetime than we have in the past.
Can I ask you to just qualify something? Sorry. Is it state or non-state actor, you think, more likely? Because
The distinction might whittle away over time, because kind of what they were describing here is that you can have state actors that are working through non-state actors to kind of obfuscate or obscure the trail back to them. I don't know if that's going to
I don't think it will be,
yes.
and I don't think it will be a state. I don't think it will be a clear state actor.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you
I have
go.
a couple thoughts on that, where I may
clear,
actually
'cause
answer the
their-
question. So this
their
goes
connection
back
to
to
the
your
non-state actor will be
terrifying
obscure.
point about miscalculation or mistake. So I think that the mistake is where the real threat lies. People at this table may remember in November, the UK gave, and I'm talking about the Ukraine-Russia conflict right now, the UK gave the Storm Shadow
Yes.
to Ukraine. We gave the ATACMS. These are systems, like missile systems, essentially, to be able to, go further into Russia allow Ukraine to fire further into Russia. And Russia was pissed off. And in response, they fired an intermediate range ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, okay? This is the first time in history that a ballistic missile was used in this kind of a kinetic war, a hot war. And I was on an airplane leaving London and I went, oh my God, is this that situation where I'm not gonna land because there's a nuclear war? Because that is precisely the kind of thing I write in Nuclear War Scenario, where something's launched and the United States, because we have a launch on warning policy, launches before it lands because we're not willing to wait to see what was in that warhead. Now, what was in the warhead was nothing. The Russians launched an inter-range ballistic missile into Ukraine with nothing in the warhead. Why? I mean, this is so terrifying. Well, we learned later when...
Before she even says, I wonder if the reason why is because she's basically trying to do what Donald Trump has been doing in his political strategy for such a long time, is you cross lines, you cross thresholds incrementally to get people used to it, so that you can start breaking down the rules systematically, breaking down the norms systematically, getting people used to not responding to those incursions, those transgressions.
When Lavrov went on television, he said that he had notified his American counterparts in advance. I was taken to the State Department to see where that advance notice came into, and it's called the NERC, the National Nuclear Security Center in the State Department. I'm messing up the name, but it's known as the NERC. It's inside the State Department, and it's basically, hello, we're not at war. room, meaning every 90 seconds you hear bing, bing.
And the reason why states or countries do this is because if they get attacked, like let's say Iran gets attacked by Israel, because I think this happened in that case too. I think the United States warned Iran before we bombed them during some of the Trump administration actions. They want to signal to the public that we're not going to let this stand, we're going to have a response, we're not going to appear weak, right? But at the same time, they don't want to escalate towards something more catastrophic. And so they'll warn the adversary or other nations like, hey, we're going to do this thing. It's kind of a show of force to kind of appease our own public population. But don't worry, that's all it is. It's just a show. It's just theater.
Bing, and that's all you hear. And I was with the Assistant Secretary of State who said, Annie, that's the Russians telling us we're not at war. And she explained to me that Lavrov,
Who's the Russian foreign minister?
the Russian foreign minister, when he said on TV, which went over everybody's head, including mine, oh, we notified our American counterparts. What did that mean? Well, what Mallory Stewart, the Assistant Secretary of State, told me was what it meant was that Lavrov rang up the NERC and said, you know, we're launching, and it doesn't have a nuclear warhead in it.
That was such a big deal. And I don't think the average person understands how big a deal that was. When, I think it was called the Oreshnik. The Oreshnik was the newest, most modern version of an ICBM, intermediate ballistic missile, IMBM, that the Russian inventory had. We had never seen it deployed. It's never been seen before. And it reminded the whole fucking world, you do not want to go down this road. A ballistic missile is a terrifying, terrifying tool.
Why?
It launches into the atmosphere where it splits into three parts. The rocket, the booster, and then what's known as a MIRV. Almost like imagine a revolver, take out the piece that holds the bullets of a revolver, and it's called a multiple independently targeted reentry vehicle, MIRV. A warhead sits in each one of those canisters of the
Not only is it hard to intercept one of those, if there's multiple of them at one time, it's hard to intercept all of them successfully with high degree of accuracy, right? So that's kind of the idea there.
revolver. And then it on its own can move in space and then drop warheads in different trajectories. And then those warheads, as they come down from space, not propelled, as they just fall from space, they reach speeds between Mach 2 and Mach 20. And then they come in contact with whatever their target. When there's a warhead on there, that warhead also, it's scheduled to explode.
And understand, by the way, that when we're talking about the speeds that these things are reaching, Mach 2, Mach 3, these are super fucking fast. And so you're trying to intercept something that, in the grand scheme of all the space that we're monitoring up in the air, is incredibly fucking small with respect to all of that. And it's moving at Mach 2, Mach 3, and you want to intercept it with something yourself that has a trajectory going through the air with wind, with air resistance, with different aerodynamic effects, right? And you can't really leave it up to chance. If it does have a nuclear warhead on it, your margin of error is so fucking small, and what you're trying to hit is like a needle in a haystack kind of situation, going really fucking fast.
Explode at altitude, at surface level, or underground, whatever they choose.
Like, I mean, just think about the idea of trying to intercept a bullet with another bullet. It sounds crazy, right? It sounds like it's something that's not possible. It sounds like a trick shot that you see on Mythbusters. Like, can we technically do this if we have like all the conditions perfectly set up properly? Yeah, but like in the real world, this is like a once in a million chance of happening. It's that kind of thing, right? Now we have technology that's designed to do this. The issue is, though, we don't have to rely on that, because technology is never really like 1000% effective every single fucking time. And we're talking about a scenario where you have a super, super small margin of error. You essentially have no margin of error. So we don't even want to chance that. We don't want to risk it.
But there's no stopping that fucking weapon. Once it drops the MIRV, once the MIRV drops the warhead, unless you have some sort of tech that can intercept a Mach 20 to Mach 2 to Mach 20.
Which no one has.
Right. We claim that we have it, but we've never actually tested it, right? We try to intercept the missiles on their trajectory, or at least when they're at their arc, at their precipice.
I don't think we've ever claimed to have that you can
That's far enough, Jedi. The pirate Valon is ours, and so is that armor he borrowed.
That armor is a threat to the safety of the Republic. It cannot fall into your hands.
We're taking that armor back if we have to rip it off Valon's body. You're not in any position to stop us.
phase, you can take something out.
So, I would want to fact check it, but either way. But my point is, when I saw those lines of Mach 20 fire coming down into Ukraine, I mean, that's the kind of, when I went...
Mach 20 is super fucking fast. I thought initially, he said like Mach 2. Mach 20 is insane. And again, this is not a large object that's falling at that speed in relative terms. Like, yes, it's big compared to a person, but when your entire field of view is the entire sky and you're trying to hit this thing way in the fuck up in the air, because you got to hit it when it's way the fuck up in the air, because at Mach 20, by the time you see it, it's going to be on your ass before you have a chance to respond, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get the point. You need to hit it when it's way the fuck up there, which means the silhouette is super fucking small and it's moving at Mach 20. So, like, let me just tell you what Mach 20 is. Let's look this up real fast. Mach 20. And when you say Mach, by the way, Mach means past the speed of sound. And I forget how the scaling works. I don't know if it's like multiples, like 2 times the speed of sound, 20 times the speed of sound, whatever it may be. Yes, 20 times. 20 times the speed of sound. So you're talking, okay? You're not talking hundreds of miles per hour. You're talking 15,000 miles per hour. And for my European friends, 24,000 kilometers an hour. It's pretty scary.
Went through nuke school.
Mm-hmm.
That's the shit that kept me up at night. I was like, we can't live in a world that does that. And now...
Unfortunately, that's the world that we're going to live in. By the way, this is why I don't like Elon. A lot of criticisms of Elon. The criticism a lot of people had all the time of, why do we need to go like colonize another planet, right? Colonizing other planets or just other celestial bodies like exponentially increases our likelihood as a species to survive. And the reason being for that is because if something were to happen to Earth, that's all of humanity wiped out, gone. If something were to happen to Earth, but we had a colony on Mars, if, let's say, that colony was self-sustainable, then we have a backup plan. If we have a colony on Mars, if we have a colony on the moon, if we have a colony on, I don't know what the next habitable or, you know, quote-unquote habitable place would be, Europa, whatever it may be. Once we move off of Earth, we've increased our survival odds exponentially. Once we move to another place that is outside our own solar system, it increases even, like, whatever extra fucking exponential that you want to add to that beyond that previous one, right? Because now we're talking about you can wipe out the entire solar system that we exist in, but we have a backup in another solar system. Once we get to the point, not if but when, that's very optimistic, where we colonize another galaxy, now we're talking about, okay, if you destroy our entire fucking galaxy, however the fuck that happens, not likely to happen. I don't know of anything that does that. We have a backup in another galaxy, right? Every time we export ourselves to a new place and we make that new place a sustainable place to live, we are exponentially increasing our odds of survival as a species from cosmological phenomenon, something like a comet hitting the Earth, something like a quasar beam, you know, wiping us the fuck out, something like a solar flare that just wipes, you know, stuff like that.
Not only did Russia show us we can do that, but they said we can do this with a new weapon system.
We can do it with a new weapon system, and we're gracious enough to tell you through the NERC this tiny little pathway of diplomacy 30 minutes before we're doing this. and you're going to take us at our word that it doesn't have a nuclear weapon so that we didn't launch on warning. It's such a game of chicken. It's nuclear chicken. It's so dangerous. What if the NERC hadn't intercepted that signal properly? It's incredibly dangerous. Now, one more thought, if I may, on Andrew's prediction of a radiological bomb, a dirty bomb going off, which may or may not be true. Unfortunately, that's a tough number, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree, just given how rogue nations work, given that terrorists have, expressed a desire to use weapons of mass destruction against the United States, which a dirty bomb is. But in my thinking, a dirty bomb, as horrible as it is, and it's going to kill people and make land, unusable for thousands of years, it's not strategic nuclear war. In other words, that's not going to cause the United States to launch on warning. First of all, it's immediately not attributable. You don't know who left it in the truck and exploded it. And so it's a different set of terrible.
I don't know. I think with the current mindset of the American public, they're going to expect some kind of retaliation on somebody. And the way that the Republican Party operates, they would feel like they would have to deliver on that. They would just kind of pick a target, I think, to blame and then launch on.
And I believe that a country like Iran, if they had a nuclear bomb, has the full capacity to do something like that, because look at the different terrorist tactics that they've used for the past 50 years.
I want to ask if something else concerns the two of you. I read this morning that it was recovered in Ukraine, a Shahed autonomous drone. These are drones that the Iranian government manufactures and provides to Russia that are used in the Ukraine theater. And what they found on there was that there was a NVIDIA processor. NVIDIA is a Western company, tech company. They're known for being advanced on their AI development. And basically that this drone, this AI had autonomous capabilities, meaning you could completely jam it, cut off any GPS communications to satellites, and this thing would think for itself, deciding when and where to go and what to do.
That's the other. So people talk about nuclear war as like the final frontier threat that we have to contend with in the future. As we move further in the future, there are technologies that are scarier than nuclear war, and that's probably going to remain to be the case.
Is that a bigger...
As far as the eye can see, because that has been basically the history of human civilization for all time. Before nuclear bombs, the scariest thing before that might have been chemical warfare. And before that, there was something else, and before that, there was something else, and we keep inventing new technologies. Like, let me give you an example, right? We're talking about drones here, okay? We talk sometimes about the prospect of AI taking over. We're developing AI in the United States, and we're relying on, the hope and the prayer that the people who design AI in the United States are responsible enough to wield this technology in a responsible manner, which I don't even have that kind of, I don't really have that kind of optimism. And by the way, sometimes I think we think of ourselves as a species that's inevitable, that will just continue, we'll find a will, and we'll find a way to keep living on. Most species on planet Earth, pretty much all of them, have died at some point. They've died off. They've either over-encumbered their own environment, in which case they aren't able to survive in it anymore, they get wiped out by natural phenomenon. It is not a foregone conclusion that we don't kill ourselves as a species. It's not. It really isn't, unfortunately. We could wipe ourselves out with AI. Not only are we making AI in the United States, that technology will eventually span itself out to other countries, and countries that may have less responsibility with technology like that than we do. And we don't even have great responsibility when it comes to it, right? Then you have things like nanomachines. What if they make nanomachines that start breaking down organic matter? When I say organic matter, I mean your body. Almost like a flesh-eating bacteria that eats away your body, but nanomachines. And they are undetectable by the human eye. Probably undetectable by, I don't know if we have any technology right now that would pick up something like that happening. It'd be in the air, invisible to the human eye. The threats that we face in the future, I don't know if, it might be a little bit exaggeration to say exponential, but you understand, it's not just nuclear war. There are a lot of things in the future that are a threat to humanity. We have to make a conscious decision as humanity to leave behind these hostile, aggressive, irresponsible, egotistical mindsets and ideologies. And frankly speaking, it might come down to us having to have some kind of war to defeat these ideologies. Because these ideologies that kind of have like the zero-sum mentality that will foment hostility and conflict throughout the world, they will not go willingly. They will not give it up willingly. We may have to resolve to find the determination ourselves to realize that it's not simply something that we can just tolerate to live with in perpetuity, that it will present an increasing threat and risk to us as society moves forward, that there is no way for humanity to survive unless we actually deal with it. Genuinely deal with it. Just my 2 cents.
Because that is here with us. It's being used actively in warfare. Is that a bigger concern than a nuclear armed ballistic missile or a re-entry missile of some kind? Something like this that would have a tactical nuke on it. Is that
honestly, it's almost antiquated to exclusively kind of treat nuclear
a drone
warfare
that is
like
a autonomous drone.
I mean, and then we're going to get to the point where, like they're saying, if we have tactical nukes, small nukes, attach that to a drone, an autonomous drone. You know, what then? What happens when AI gets smart enough to develop their own nuclear capabilities? What then, right?
Yeah, that's terrifying.
This is fascinating. I mean, this is now. They now have these drones that are thinking for themselves in Ukraine because they're anticipating that they can't communicate with whatever.
And there are people that we share a planet with who think that the life that we have on this planet, on this reality, is, how do I put it? It's that you can sacrifice it, that it's not ultimately important because they believe in some sort of afterlife that they can't prove, and they believe it with all their might, I guess. Like, it might be a rude thing to say, but it really needs to be said. We are dealing with a significant portion of the human population, not just in the United States, but globally, that do not respect the life that we have on the planet that we currently exist in, because they are convinced that life, this life that we live here, is they're willing to sacrifice it for some theoretical fantasy of a life that exists beyond it, that we have no evidence for. And that's pretty huge. That's a huge risk to take.
To put a nuclear weapon onto a drone, you have to have the nuclear weapon, which is just the circular discussion of why.
Which the Russians have.
Right, but the Russians, I don't see putting a nuclear weapon on a drone.
No, but
they absolutely will. No, they absolutely will. This is just a matter of time. They 100% will. Under the current leadership, they absolutely will. And in fact, I would say that it's only a matter of time for the United States is the same thing, because the mentality, even expressed in this own roundtable, is that we have to treat everything like it's zero sum and assume that everybody else is hostile and out to get us, and therefore we must meet force with force in the same, in the same degree or whatever. So it really is only a matter of time, and it's only a matter of time, unfortunately, because these mentalities still persist through humanity, and we allow that to be the case.
The Iranians put a radiological bomb, a dirty bomb.
The Iranians, that's a different.
They're stubborn, Valen. But when the flagship is ready, the rest of the White Maw will follow. Who's that?
Someone who can't take a hint. I was hoping you'd be here for this. See? Some in the White Maw see that I'm the future. When this ship is raised, I'll have a whole planet of followers.
This ship isn't going anywhere, and I'm taking that armor back.
Single-handed. Guess it would have to be. The White Maw is mine, along with this ship. When she takes to the sky, the Outer Rim's gonna tremble before...
Nice, Valen.
No, you can't do this. I'm untouchable. Even death can't take me.
The Coalition will be here soon. Your only hope of survival is to give up now.
They want me, they'll have to step over your carcass. You're finished, Jedi.
Right,
yes,
right. This
that's
is
the big fear.
this is an Iranian-made
Yes.
drone using an American microprocessor with Chinese anti-GPS, jamming technology. I mean, it was fascinating. This thing is an autonomous flying computer that can just think for itself and decide in the moment, okay, I'm going to do this instead of that. There is no more real-life human feedback or control mechanism.
I think there's two really fascinating things about your question, right? The first is that you just described a drone that was a bastard child of Chinese.
The other thing to consider too is what do we refer to when we're talking about a drone, right? What if we have a MIR, entry vehicle with a warhead or multiple warheads, but the warheads are able to maneuver themselves through the atmosphere, so they change trajectory in the atmosphere? Is that not a drone? Is it not a drone because it doesn't look like what we think of as a drone? It has the ability to maneuver itself. It has the ability to act autonomously. It is a drone, right?
It's gone. You broke...
That's music to my ears. Hello, Valan. I've been waiting for this since we buried Antilles.
Just hold on, Jedi. I got a deal for you. Hear me out.
My patience is wearing thin.
Your Rift Alliance needs help, right? I got men, ships, equipment. I could attack the Empire's trade routes for you.
You had better be joking.
The armor's broken, but you'd get the pick of what I got left. You can have my oath right now.
If I was a different character, I'd say yes, but unfortunately this character always has to take the Boy Scout moral high road. She wouldn't be using duplicitous tactics or subterfuge, so... unfortunate.
You must answer for the men you killed.
And that means you finally get to enjoy some Republic hospitality, Valan. Thank you, Jedi, for everything. Meet us back at the Republic base. We'll get our guest where he belongs.
Iranian and Russian tech.
And American tech.
And
NVIDIA.
Stolen.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Stolen American tech.
Yeah.
Yep.
But my point is, when we think about the future landscape, that's a perfect example of this rising power in the East, this collaboration in the East that is not based on ideology, because those three countries have nothing in common ideologically, but they have so much in common pragmatically with the idea of combating
A shared enemy.
So that's the first thing that was really interesting to me. Now, the second thing, this idea of an AI-driven weapon. I am going to be wildly unpopular, I promise you, by all the sci-fi geeks out there. I think that AI-powered weapons are the next logical evolution and a good evolution for us. Because
It's a neutral one. It's not good or bad. It's what are we going to use it for, right? And the issue, unfortunately, is that the reality is that humanity is going to use it for ill and for good. And yeah, I don't know. Unless and until as a species we decide that we want to just finally put the nail in the coffin of these ideologies that present like conflict and hostility, this is going to be an ongoing problem that we're going to consistently have over and over and over again. But we're not ready to have that conversation. We're not. No one's willing to have that conversation yet because the what is this?
Stay alive.
The downstream kind of responses to that are beyond what people want to imagine or talk about.
Because I would rather trust
That's
an
all I'm
AI
gonna say.
that's been programmed appropriately with the rules of warfare and what's properly engagement law and all. I would trust that over an 18-year-old with a gun who's been indoctrinated by the American crazy shit that we do to get people ready for war. I would.
But I mean, it's no different. If the troops that we have are corruptible because the people we put in positions of power decide how we want to train those soldiers and what orders to give them, the same fucking thing's going to happen with AI. Whoever's in charge at the time will decide how those AIs are being programmed.
Much rather have some AI device that can't be altered except by its own logical process.
If the AI becomes self-aware and it's preserving.
Jedi, we've been waiting for you. We wanted to say thanks before we left.
We'd never have made it through without your help. It was worth it all to see Valon stuffed in a convict shuttle.
It was an honor to work alongside you. Go well.
The LT got called up to your starship to make his report. He said to meet you up there. Whatever anyone says, you're one of us now, Jedi. Best of luck.
Itself and can't. So if
That's a
it's being-
huge if.
Yeah, that's
That's
a
a
way
huge
down the
if.
line.
But there's a lot of ifs that have now faster than I realize are coming to fruition. That's the other concern, right?
These ifs are inevitabilities. If you think that we're beyond it, what in your mind is making you think that other actors aren't beyond it? These things are going to happen. I mean, we've already in this conversation talked about hostile, irrational, crazy actors, people like Donald Trump, people like Putin, people like the leadership in Iran, these non-state terrorist actors, right? What makes you think that you're going to be able to contain these things and that this is just an if question? This is a when question. Or if we want to consider it to not be an if question, that means that we need to take active steps to do something about it. It's not just going to happen out of the, I don't know, the good grace of human nature. It's not going to happen.
A self-aware
singularity, right?
Right, a singularity that becomes hell-bent on its own preservation, right? Which, again, those are two big ifs: the singularity and then preservation, its own self-preservation.
If an AI driven.
Oh, that's what they're talking about. If on, I mean, even that I think is probably probably an eventuality.
Be safe out there.
Self-awareness. What even is self-awareness? I think what we're gonna wind up finding as a species as time goes on, and AI technology keeps increasing over time, is that self-awareness is more of an emergent gradient property rather than some sort of on and off switch, and that AI is going to become increasingly indistinguishable from something that has self-awareness, and we're going to find that what we call self-awareness isn't really all that special to begin with. It's just sensory. It's something that has the ability to process sensory data, which also has a conception of itself distinct from its environment, which robots are going to have the ability to do. So it's only a matter of time there. And then the other questions about everything else that's downstream from that, the consequences of that, they're not going to be an if question. They're going to be a when question, basically.
Drone is meant to target a specific enemy, and it is noticing that it is being targeted. It'll try to avoid being shot at or taken down, right?
It'll have countermeasures.
Okay, and if it does so, if it has to make the choice of, let's
As
say,
self-preservation,
detating or going into a civilian area,
at least some degree of
self-preservation
self-preservation.
that is contrary to its mission objective, but to do so would preserve its capabilities. It wouldn't do that. That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, where you're getting that self-awareness.
That's
again.
what, right? Like if it's
what would most likely happen is an AI device like what you're describing.
Yeah.
Would be programmed with a mission set. It would come under fire. It would use its own best judgment for countermeasures. I
mean, we don't even have to guess about this. All we have to do is look at self-driving cars right now. When they're in situations where it has to make a choice between crashing into an object or crashing into another driver or another person or another vehicle, we've seen where, I think just recently there was an incident like this where it crashed into another car because it had to make a split-second decision whether it was going to hit a pedestrian or what it was going to do, and there was basically nowhere for it to go other than to crash into another car. So there are going to be situations like this where, depending on the programming, like what is its ability actually to mitigate circumstances that we don't really anticipate create a conflict in its own programming, right?
Those countermeasures were ineffective and it was starting to go down. The next priority that it would have would be to eradicate anything that's intellectual property that it has on board.
Got it.
So that's something that we don't currently have. That's why it's so dangerous when a B-2 gets shot down overseas.
Right, because what's on...
And also those systems, from what I understand, are no longer going to be single Predator drones, single Reaper drones. They are drone swarms.
Yeah.
And so they work, which is its
As a
own
hive
set
mind,
of terrifying...
Right, drone swarms and kamikaze drone swarms, no less at that, where they're designed to be destroyed, to hit their target and not come back.
The day that we see AI-driven weapons is, I think, a day that most veterans are probably looking forward to, because if you've seen the horrors of war, if you've lost...
You're only looking forward to it if you are naive to the long-term consequences and the downstream implications of this kind of technology. Yes, we are preserving human lives in the sense that human lives aren't the ones waging the war. I guess if we're presupposing that these AI tools are not going to be used to also target human life, or it goes rogue or something. So there's a much more robust conversation than just, oh, well, the AI is going to replace the human soldier. No, there's a lot of other things to consider with all that.
Lost a friend, if you've worn a fucking medal for shooting other people, like, it's a horrible, horrible thing.
But how does that change the friction of going to war? Because it makes going to war much easier, right?
It does. It absolutely.
This is actually the premise of Gundam Wing, believe it or not. This children's show with giant fighting robots. What's this idea that war, inherently, the value of war is the sacrifice of the human lives that are attached to it, either because of soldiers that you're deploying out on the battlefield whose lives are in danger, or the civilians who are either targets or the ultimate consequence of who wins the war. Once you remove that factor, when it's just robots fighting robots, there's something massively lost in terms of the entire purpose of even waging a war in the first place. Civilians, human life will always be in the crosshairs of these things. Otherwise, we just have like a fun television show where we have two robots fighting each other. There's always going to be a human cost to these things, because otherwise we wouldn't really be engaging with them in the first place.
Digestible.
And that's, I think...
Quite a story, Jedi. If we'd known the pirates had such technology. At least you were there to make the mission a success.
Nagula ji wamtahumpa mulira watawampa.
He was at my mercy. The Jedi Code required I spare him for judgment.
Hiuna liska chananga wachi kospa ini kontika.
We're forgetting someone. Good work, Lieutenant Iresso. We'll make sure the Republic rewards you before you're reassigned.
Actually, sir, as a reward, you could persuade my superiors to assign me here, if that's okay. It'd be an honor to serve with you. Plus, an extra blaster never goes amiss, right?
There's most certainly a place for you here, Lieutenant.
Thanks. That's a warmer reception than I've had in a while.
Excellent. It's settled then. I'm sorry. Could you excuse us for a moment?
You mentioned someone on Hoth was sending the Empire information about you.
Have you discovered who it was?
I think it was someone on board.
Since
I found that monitoring device, I've been watching our communications. I spotted a message to the Empire in amongst other messages while the channels were busy, but I can't trace who sent it.
The monitoring device, the messages, Lord Kyros's inside knowledge. Our traitor can work our communication system.
So, who uses the comm system the most?
Doesn't necessarily
She's
tell you.
always getting news from her world.
No. Alani sticks to her personal channel. Ty only got a call or two before he left. Duan never speaks to anyone.
A Selkath could easily avoid suspicion after what the Empire
It's pretty
did to them.
racist, just refer to him as Selkath. It's like saying
Maybe
the Muslim
before
on
at
board.
station. But now Shuru won't hear a word against you.
You know, Blasis gets an awful lot of work from the Aragorn bureaucracy, and a lot of calls. Wait, when you were on Hoth,
Is
and
Blasis
someone
the one
leaked those
who
messages,
acts nervous all the time?
Blasis was sending reports everywhere. What if he alerted the Empire then?
Even if Blasis isn't responsible, he could point us in the right direction.
Wait here. I'll see where he's got to.
No, it couldn't be Blasis. I just sent him on a mission. I meant to surprise you, Nadia. King Sethan and Queen Niska themselves are donating a regiment to the Republic.
What does Blasis have to do with this?
The royal
The
family
Blazes.
wanted to heal relations between the Rift Alliance and the Republic. They thought donating troops would help. They planned a ceremony on Waypoint Station 3 to present you with the soldiers. But you were needed on Hoth, so I sent Blasis as our envoy. He's with the King and Queen right now.
Tell the royals to stay with their soldiers until I arrive.
There's no answer. Jedi, what have I done?
I'll contact Ty. His droids could guard the royal family until we get there.
Hurry. Everyone on that station could be in danger.
Will do, Jedi. Let's go.
Based. Okay. How much longer do I have for this round table? Oh my god.
I think part of why we're seeing this appetite for conflict moving forward, right? I think we would be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about the complacency of the world in accepting this rapid evolution of conflict.
Yes, but the issue again is that the United States itself has a faction within the United States that is holding us back from putting forth true leadership, consistent leadership on these issues. And the world is taking note of that, and especially the hostile actors within the world and they're taking advantage of it. We have a lot of foreign bot farms which are fomenting even more division in the United States to keep us distracted and to separate, to bifurcate NATO and the UN and everything in between, right? So, I don't know.
What do you mean the complacency of the world?
We're all just sitting here watching.
Yes, we are sitting here watching, but again, it's because we're fighting with each other, fighting amongst each other. And we're not really showing like a commitment to principles or values or the order that we're supposed to be upholding. The United States threatening Greenland, it just flies in the face of any ability to uphold any of these standards and to lead the world in showing like, hey, we have some rules, we have standards, we have norms, and we expect everyone to follow it. That right there, that alone is a massive blow to the stability of the world order and ability to, present a strong, consistent, stable front against these sort of transgressions.
Watching it happen. It's almost, in a sick way, I think there are people watching the news in anticipation of the next conflict. It's almost turned into a giant NASCAR race. Who's the next? What's the next thing that's going to happen? The horse race effect that you were talking about. We want to know what are the body counts. We want to know who's winning. We want to know what's the newest weapon. It's become almost a
reality
game.
TV.
Well,
I mean, they're saying this while they're discussing all this stuff on a podcast for, has a degree of entertainment value to it, right? Not that you should be having these conversations or anything, but I mean, it's a little bit ironic.
it made me, when you were speaking of the war game that you designed, and you were talking about two trolls in a bar, it's like, that's
my band name, by the way.
Okay, but it's literal and it's figurative and it's narrative, so it's very interesting to me, and it's terrifying because it really does speak to what you just said, where the body count from far away on television is not the same thing as the horror of the person experiencing it.
Indeed.
Is there anywhere on this map, Annie, that is safe in a war? Because, I think as a way of dealing with the angst of this, in our group chat, me and my friends, when these things start kicking off all the time, I think this is a coping mechanism. We all, share the fact that some of us are, down here on the map, and one of us is in Australia, but then my other friend, unfortunately, he's in, Dubai. And we're always looking at a map and when the bombs are going off. Is there anywhere on this map that is safe in the event of a nuclear war?
There's one tiny little place, New Zealand, and a little bit of Australia, and that has to do with, if you follow the idea of nuclear war, that agriculture fails when we have a nuclear winter, and the sun gets blocked out and there's no more. There's large bodies up in the mid-latitudes are frozen over in sheets of ice, and when you have all the billions of people dying, it's because agriculture fails. And it is said by those who study this, the authors of Nuclear Winter, that there are some areas in Australia and New Zealand which would remain viable. But you're talking about kind of...
Well, that's going to make them targets for, divvying up amongst the powers that be. Because if this is the only area that we're perceiving as safe from nuclear winter, whatever it may be, then it becomes attractive property for everybody to kind of fight over as like a failsafe, something to fall back on. In which case, it's no longer the go-to safe place to duck out into, I guess. It's bound, okay.
Hunter-gatherer type people. Now, among the stranger conversations I have had since Nuclear War a Scenario published was with several billionaires who actually have bunkers in New Zealand.
No.
Oh, yeah.
They will remain nameless, but they were
Name
very...
them.
I will not name them. I will not name my sources, but what was interesting to me, it was that...
I mean, it's not hard. How many billionaires do we have to, like, draw from that we could probably assume who these people are, obviously. I wonder, too, if land sales in New Zealand are a matter of public record, too. That might be the case, and I don't really know. Yes, they are. Okay, so we could probably find this shit. I don't really care, because what is it going to change to find out, right? But we could probably both assume and then probably confirm to a high degree of certainty who these people are. It's probably people like Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, like these kind of assholes.
These individuals were the response to reading my book and realizing the world could end in 72 minutes wasn't, let's all get together and make sure nuclear war doesn't happen. Or maybe it was, and I just didn't hear that part of the conversation, but it was more about how fast can I get my G5 loaded so I can get to New Zealand, because a G5 can, a private aircraft can take you from Los Angeles to New Zealand without refueling. And so I think...
I don't know if this is a slip up, but she basically outed a few people by mentioning Los Angeles. We could probably assume that these people are in the SoCal area, or spend a lot of time there, at least. I guess it's possible that she's only using that as a frame of reference, and that we're just using it to illustrate how fast it takes for a G5 to get to somewhere like that.
I think what I'm saying on a narrative level, and it speaks to the watching of TV or the trolls in the bar, is like, and this is me, the parent, speaking, it's like, I really believe in diplomacy. I really do believe in communication. I'm often accused of sounding Pollyanna-ish here, but I will cite, I spoke of the Reagan-Gorbachev joint statement, nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. But what preempted that was these two individuals, Reagan and Gorbachev, arch enemies, the United States and the Soviet Union. This is in 1983. Ronald Reagan saw the movie the day after, A Great Narrative, an ABC TV movie about a nuclear war. And it's
unfortunate that our leaders are so fucking stupid that they need to watch a fucking made-for-TV movie in order to understand the consequences of these things.
Upset him. He was Reagan being a nuclear hawk. It so upset him that he reached out to the arch enemy, the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, and said, we need to have a dialogue and we need to reduce our arsenals.
We're not going to live forever. And when we think about all the existential threats that are in front of us, some people say the sun's going to explode, or some AI is going to get out of control and pest control scenario where it just kind of takes us out or whatever. But it appears to me that the greatest existential threat we have is ourselves in this regard, and these weapons that can wipe out this planet in a couple of minutes are clearly the greatest existential threat. And there doesn't seem to be any way back from that.
Which is a great opportunity to realize, this is the pathway of more wars is not the only way.
I have a strangely more optimistic and fatalistic perspective here. So when I look at this map, I think there's lots of places that are safe in the event of a nuclear conflict, especially if you consider traditional nuclear conflict, which is going to come from the 9 states that are...
I mean, I don't know if anywhere is genuinely actually safe, because it depends on how many nuclear bombs we launch. We can wind up in a point where there's so much nuclear radiation and so much dust has been kicked up into the sky because of the nuclear blast that we go into nuclear winter and nowhere's safe on the planet. You can live in a bunker and I guess maybe emerge a decade later and maybe you survive, but at that point, like, humanity's basically been wiped out and we're trying to rebuild from I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, I'd need to dive into more about what happens in that eventuality, because I wonder at that point, like, what is the soil usable? Can we even use the soil to plant crops at that point? How long can we actually persist outside without, incurring nuclear radiation damaging effects to our bodies? Right?
Nuclear capable. You're going to see whatever exchange of strategic or tactical warheads happen. You're going to see trade winds take whatever debris.
You did it.
Mike,
if they're cat.
I don't like.
I've said.
Comes specifically from surface-based detonations, because seed-based detonations and air-based detonations will not create the same amount of fallout. So you'll see trade winds do what they do, but in large part, you're going to see two centers of the map firing at each other. So South America is going to get spared, Africa is going to get spared, Europe is going to be absorbing.
So yeah, in this scenario where you have nuclear blasts up in the air, you're not going to kick up dust to generate a nuclear winter. So I guess that could be true. But again, this is an if. This is if the nuclear destruction is consigned to just air blasts rather than being. And I'm not even sure. I'm kind of curious about this. Don't we have radiation now floating around the sky? Nuclear detonation in the air, effects on the planet. The launch of 100 Hiroshima nuclear weapons, less than 10% of the global arsenals, released 5 billion kilograms of soot in the upper atmosphere. Again, this is if they're released on ground. The question is if they're released up in the sky, what is the effect of that? The Hain is a nuclear detonation above 30 kilometers, where the density of air is so low enough the energy from the weapon interacts with its surroundings in a markedly different manner than a mushroom cloud if detonated near the ground. These detonations create damage to electronics within the Earth's atmosphere through their production of HEMPs. E1, the most damaging HEMP mechanism created by Haines, results because the air density is extremely low around the explosion. Unlike at low altitudes, therefore, electromagnetic radiation can travel great distances in a downward direction before interacting with air molecules. Many of these interactions result in ionization, or the freezing of our electrons, which causes a burst of electromagnetic energy as they are deflected by the Earth's magnetic field. This burst of energy, or EMP, occurs over a large area where it causes damage or disruption of electronics. Haines can damage or destroy satellites through primary mechanisms. This is limited to satellites within line of sight. The amount of prompt radiation. Second, free electrons result in the explosion can become trapped in artificial radiation belts due to Earth's magnetic field, creating a hostile environment satellites passing through. These electrons can be trapped for years. Additionally, the radiation belt presents challenges in reconstituting space within new satellites due to the lasting effects, for example. Okay, but this all has to do with like electronics. We can still survive without electronics we have for thousands of years. The question, though, is does this have any negative impact on like the atmosphere, space, ground, or both? Altitude is a key factor determining the effects of Haines are experiencing on ground or on satellites. An explosion of a height of 30 kilometers would create an appreciable, though not minimal, EMP, would have minimal effects in satellite sites in the scenario largely blah, blah, blah. While the strength of considerably above the height, the ground area's effect increases. Higher altitude Haines, such as the previous use tested Starfish Prime at 300 kilometers, affect a larger area but have a much weaker associated HEMP. These higher exposures will also have significantly greater impacts on satellites due to lack of attenuation in the atmosphere. Their closer proximity to many satellites in orbit and increasing the field of view of satellites at risk with increasing altitudes. No one would use a nuclear... Okay. EMS will disable everything electronic. A Hain harms the user as much as the target. Hains offer a less provocative option to ground-based nuclear detonations. Hains will still cause human suffering. Will not directly kill humans. The direct effects likely would. Satellites is a lot about electronics. The effects of Hains can be anticipated and mitigated. No, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, that's what it's saying. But what I want to know... I don't think it would lead to a nuclear winter, but I feel like me asking this question might prompt the AI to tell me about what other effects it might have in lieu of that. It's less likely to cause traditional nuclear winter compared to surface burst on cities, but it still possesses severe atmospheric effects. See, what did I fucking tell you on how to game this AI? While nuclear winter depends on massive soot injection from burning cities, high altitude burst if they damage critical infrastructure causing fires, or if coupled with surface burst. Okay, but that's if it's coupled with surface burst. Could still trigger catastrophic, long-lasting climate shifts. Nuclear winter is primarily caused by 50 to 150 plus teragrams of black smoke from city firestorms caused rising into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight. High-altitude bursts primarily damage electronics, but a full-scale exchange involving both high... Okay, but I want to know just strictly high-altitude. Nuclear exchange causes temperatures to drop to, but that's if you have soot in the atmosphere. The smoke could linger in the atmosphere for months, but that's if it's, again, if we have detonations at the surface. You will always get some radioactive fallout from the weapon materials themselves, and any detonation low enough to damage the ground physically will cause some material to get sucked into the mushroom cloud and create fallout, but yeah, high altitude ones don't produce a mushroom cloud. Yes, the airburst where the fireball doesn't touch the ground will create significantly less fallout. With nukes, the major thermal radiation distance exceeds 5 psi. By increasing amounts of warheads get more powerful. If the nuclear war detonation at altitude such as the firestorm third degree burn type energy didn't reach the ground, the blast is going to fail to destroy any significant target. Cleaner but ineffective to the point. This would be considered a good intercept if done on purpose. The direct gamma radiation in modern nukes is mostly irrelevant because if you're close enough to take a dose that people would care about, it wouldn't exist anymore anyways. Okay. It's very much going to depend on the altitude. Detonating nukes in space 60 miles up should suffice. A good portion of the energy is going to be a form of EMP deep in the atmosphere, and it's almost all the concussive heat and shock waves. So yes, the high altitude would avoid the sort of destruction. A nuke detonated high in the atmosphere enough to cause some damage on the ground, and smaller EMP probably wouldn't be a very tactical use. Various conceptual plans are drawn up from the hypothetical World War III, where the first wave of nukes would detonate high above the enemy nation in the hopes of knocking out their ability to respond to destroying their electrical grids, followed within minutes, seconds, with ground attacks on their military bases and sites. Will follow up mid-air bursts over major cities to do as much destruction over a wide scale as possible. The problem with detonating nukes at a high altitude, at an altitude unlikely to cause nuclear winter level debris entering the high atmosphere, is that you're leaving the enemy ample opportunity to respond. Hardened missile silos requires almost direct hits, and if you're going to detonate nukes to destroy soft-spilling targets without creating a nuclear winter, then the enemy will still be largely intact and very, very upset. Okay, so it seems like maybe these high-altitude strikes wouldn't cause a nuclear winter. I'm not sure if it would cause... I don't want to dive into it too deeply, but it sounds like it would probably be survivable for humanity and potentially just affect like electronics for the most part. But what is the likelihood that that would be the scenario that would be chosen in the event of such an exchange? I don't know.
Bad winds, depending on what the trade winds look like Southeast Asia and Australia, largely, these are going to be spared locations, depending on what Pakistan and India do.
Stand
right?
by for examination
But
of suggested product.
My concern isn't the nuclear factor, it's the human factor after that. When Russia or China and the United States and Israel and Iran, when all these countries are just destroyed by their own conflict, and whatever fragmentary governments are trying to reset themselves, you've lost all of that GDP, you've lost all of that infrastructure, you've lost all of that world order. So now, people are just going to get worse. African warlords are just going to get worse.
But
Latin American warlords are just going to get worse. I mean, it's going to be the age of the warlord again.
I don't know if that's as much a fatalistic view as perhaps it is a naive view, because when one of the components that you left out are the fires that will be burning after the nuclear detonations. And the fires burning are what lofts the soot, and that is what causes a nuclear winter.
Yes, but I think what he's talking about, that these would be high enough altitude that they wouldn't interact with the ground in that manner. I think that's what he's saying here, from what I was reading.
And if you look at the climate modeling, even a small, air quotes, nuclear war between India and Pakistan is enough to cause a mini nuclear winter. And so there will be no African warlords because they will starve as well. There will be no resetting of any of these governments.
So I think there's just a misunderstanding on her part. No offense to her or anything, but also from what I read, I mean, it very much just depends on do we even trust that in a nuclear war type scenario that they would only be detonating these high enough to not trigger the effects of nuclear winter, and it doesn't seem like that would make much sense.
Understanding, interviewing the experts on nuclear war, looking at the climate models that now tell us this very factually, that humanity dies. And so I don't think it's a reset at all, unless a reset is like us going back to our hunter-gatherer state from 12,000 years ago, trying to figure out how to kind of evolve again.
I mean, I don't think that all human beings will be lost. There will be human beings that make it through that. And if there's
a couple dozen will survive, so, no big deal. I know that's not what he's saying, I'm just being stupid. But...
And here's our guest of honor. Kyrus, if the Jedi takes one step toward their majesties, cut their throats.
It will be done, my master.
We're no threat to you. Please, at least release my wife.
I know you can exploit any advantage, Jedi. So the soldiers had to die. The civilians, too. I do, after all, take pride in being thorough.
So much darkness. And I never felt anything from you except fear.
Is that curiosity or envy?
I'm no mere infiltrator. I am Organ Blasis, and I am a child of the Emperor. I was brought before the Emperor as an infant, and imprinted with his power, his consciousness. I shared the greatest mind in the galaxy. With the first sun concealed in my presence, I joined hundreds of my brothers and sisters scattered throughout the Republic to watch and wait.
Cliche villain monologue, am I right? Just telling us his entire plan and his life story and everything.
Who is this first son you speak of?
Oh yeah, just tell me everything.
To receive this honor. I can't even comprehend the power he wields.
This is immaterial. An Imperial fleet is coming. You will all be destroyed, and without the Rift Alliance, the Republic is finished. But the Empire is merciful, Your Highness. Your planet could be spared the coming destruction.
How? Tell me.
Order your bodyguards to kill the Jedi.
Even if you agree, he'll betray you, and the Empire will destroy your world.
Senator Grell told us about your courage. I will not raise my hand against you.
Your Empire's friendship is worthless to us.
You'll regret being so stubborn when your planet is burning. Kyrus, show them how a Jedi dies.
Modeling, then the modeling is based on averages. I would love to see how a nuclear winter spreads across the globe. But the idea that humanity would end, meaning the last human being would be...
Okay, so they're both misunderstanding each other now. Which, it's not super surprising. Nuclear stuff is probably not their main area of expertise. Like the mechanics, the physics behind it.
Unrealistic.
No, I don't think it's an extinction event. think it's immune extinction. I mean, that was an idea that was first proposed by Carl Sagan, based on the climate modeling that was available in the 80s, which was pretty, you know, how the computers work. But now you're...
Yeah, but again, I think Carl Sagan was probably talking about nuclear blasts that happen close enough to the ground level to kick up soot in the atmosphere, triggering the nuclear winter. It sounds like these high-altitude blasts that generate an EMP are only generating an EMP without the effects of the soot getting kicked up. That soot is like the main mechanism that causes that nuclear winter, as far as I understand from what I read.
Why won't you accept that our victory is inevitable? Destroying my servant won't end this. The first son of the Emperor will lead us to glory. Your death is the first step on that path.
At least give me the courtesy of knowing my enemy's name.
Yeah, while you're talking, just tell me everything. Might as well. Don't even have to
killing you.
take him in and interrogate him. He just gives it all up willingly.
Looking at the modeling, and again, this is just based on like soot going into the atmosphere, that maybe you with your training would be one of the survivors, but the rest of us...
I'll tell you exactly what my training was. When I lived underground in a silo, we knew that if a nuclear weapon went off above your head, take your life while you can, because trying to survive what's left behind is going to be worse. Dying as your organs melt is far worse than...
Yeah, and it's not just, I mean, in the events that you have a nuclear winter, when you get soot kicked up in the atmosphere, in that event specifically, not these high altitude blasts that just generate the EMP. In that event, it's not just, oh, we are set back to pre-industrial days and we're like agrarian farmers without like electrical infrastructure like that. No, it's now you're dealing with the inability to even raise crops because you can't see the sun. Now you're dealing with all the radiation on everything that's poisoning you. Now you're dealing with, you know, like the depression that comes with living in a constant state of not having sunlight, lack of vitamin, you know, D deficiency, lack of nutrition from like the plants that can't grow and stuff like that. Like, let's see, how long would a nuclear winter last? How long would a nuclear winter last? 10 to 15 years. You're not surviving that. The agricultural collapse. You won't be able to grow plants. Without plants, the entire, like, the food chain, everything up the food chain dies. The insects don't have food to eat. The birds don't have insects to eat. The cats don't have birds to eat, right? The plants that generate nuts for the squirrels don't have nuts to eat, right? Everything up the food chain basically relies on plant life. So everything's going to die. And it's going to be a slow, agonizing death if you survive that initial impact. And then the other thing about it, too, is in the event of nuclear winter, which presupposes that they're detonated close enough to the ground, everything's irradiated, I believe, right? Nuclear winter, what is the radioactive fallout? I don't even know if that's the right term. The residual high radiation debris, fission products, weapon debris, and soil. So the soil itself, right, would be radiated, projected in the atmosphere. I mean, yeah, a lot of it would be projected in the atmosphere, right? But I think some of it would still be on the ground. By the explosion, which then descends back to Earth, causing widespread long-term contamination. It primarily causes dangerous gamma radiation exposure, which particles settling within minutes nearby or traveling globally over months. Immediate dangers include acute radiation sickness, vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, death. Long-term effects include increased cancer risk, genetic mutation, and chronic illness. So it's just an extinction event. It just is, you know.
Shooting yourself in the head today, and that may sound terrible, but what we're talking about is terrible.
Yeah, it's either immediate death or it's long-term torture for 10 to 15 years, I guess. I don't even know if you survive 10 to 15 years, because again, how do you survive that long without agriculture? How do you survive that long when everything around you, everything you touch is full of radiation? You have radiation sickness, cancer, and a variety of other like illnesses that you develop as a result.
He's dead? How could you... He seemed invincible. Why would he do this? Tobus Grell said Blasis was your ally.
I intend to find out before these children of the Emperor do any more damage.
Our troops died because of his treachery. They were so proud. They would have served your Republic well.
This probably isn't a good answer. We must move on, Pastor Guy. Bro, they just died. Get over it.
Your soldiers died nobly, trying to protect you.
I hope Tobus Grell and little Nadia are all right. We owe them so much.
Senator Grell and his daughter have earned their place on my ship. I'll take care of them.
We will ask the Republic for help getting home. I will never forget how you came to our rescue. From now on, the Republic will have full access to our treasury.
Oh, nice. Can I get some of that access?
If you are being targeted, there may be further attacks.
You're kind to be so concerned, but we will be safe at home.
Goodbye, Jedi. Go safely.
Terrible times. What we're talking about is terrible times. And nobody wants to try to, it's not like the movies and the TV shows. Nobody wants to try to live through that. You either get spared because you are luckily on vacation in Patagonia when it happens, and then you just have to figure out how to live off of fucking weeds and sheep, or you're somewhere where you can't avoid it. We often joke in a...
Yeah, I mean, the billionaires who are stockpiling for this eventuality in bunkers and stuff, like, they're basically going to have provisions that are going to last them like a decade or something. I mean, I'd have to dive into, like, the real specifics about, you know, maybe, like, how irradiated are things for, you know, 5 years down the line? At what point can you kind of sort of start planting crops again, right? But I imagine their provisions are going to have to last years in order to survive that kind of scenario.
Way, if you see a mushroom cloud, run towards it, because you will much prefer the sunburn.
It's morose, but
the survival rate afterwards.
My takeaway from what you said was Middle Earth indoors. See, that's why I said New Zealand.
Yeah, I was thinking Benjamin.
But it doesn't. I mean, in the situation they're talking about, this affects everywhere on the entire fucking planet. I don't think you're getting away just because you're in New Zealand. If you have a nuclear winter, I don't think that. Everything on New Zealand's going to die. It's not going to have access to sunlight. All the plants and crops are going to die. And then the radiation's going to spread around the globe.
Middle Earth indoors.
Yeah, narrative. There's your narrative.
Blasis was a Sith. He's dead, and the royal family are safe. But their soldiers weren't as lucky.
Jedi, quickly. You need to hear this.
Good to see you. My commanders and our droids routed an Imperial fleet near your position, but this report is odd. Our men had a dozen sudden power failures, a major communications fault. I'd call that sabotage.
I suspect I know who's behind it, but let me know what you find.
I sense a Jedi business explanation approaching.
Master Ceo's trying to get through.
Thank the Force you're all right. The Empire has launched a devastating offensive. The galaxy is again at war. Dozens of major systems are being invaded. An Imperial ambush almost broke the Republic fleet and the Jedi. Every hour, more are lost. We managed to protect the core worlds, but the rest of the Republic is under fire.
The Empire never intended this peace to last.
I need you. All of you.
Rocket scientist
The Rift
right there.
Alliance worlds are the only ones still standing strong. We need you to... Wait. I don't see the Aragorn representative. Is Blasis all right?
I also have bad news. The Republic has been infiltrated.
The children of the Emperor. Now, of all times, you say they've hidden themselves in the Republic.
Sounds like you've come across the children before.
Several years ago, one of the Dark Council turned and joined us. He brought valuable intelligence. He mentioned these children of the Emperor, but even the Dark Council only knew terrible rumors. We must be on guard. In the meantime, the Chancellor has invoked an ancient law giving Jedi Masters military authority. The Republic needs our leadership.
What would you have me do?
We can't win with the armies we have. The Republic needs powerful allies. And you have already proven you could lead them. You and the Rift Alliance must search the galaxy, seek out the strongest forces you can find, to strike back at the Empire.
You won't be alone out there, Jedi.
Magukala hajat is ije.
Balmora will always be your ally, no matter what.
I'd rather follow someone I respect. Count me in too. So it shall be.
We must begin our search for allies at once.
I must admit, this task does seem near impossible. Places murdered so many of my people alone. To fight all the children and this empire. Who could help us?
We need more than just soldiers. To truly face the Empire, we'll need superior tactics or technology.
Voltesak fek ut hazo negre. Akon ivolomar.
What of the Noeticons? The ancient masters who taught you the shielding technique. Their knowledge and experience could guide us.
The Noeticons were lost when the Sith attacked me on Coruscant.
We recovered the last fragments of the Noeticons, and our most gifted engineers have been reconstructing them on Tython. They haven't responded to anyone, even the Council. But they may remember you. I must go. Leave for Tython and speak to the Noeticons. I hope their knowledge has survived. May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
I thought it was, so my understanding is that there's actually 3 safe zones.
You are right.
There's
Also,
Hawaii.
No.
I thought it was Hawaii.
When they say safe zones here, I mean, I don't know what they mean by that. Nuclear, winter, safe zone. Maybe there is something to this. Shouldn't count it out necessarily. Okay. The safest zones during nuclear winter are generally in the southern hemisphere, specifically New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, and Chile, due to their distance from northern mid-altitude targets and agricultural resilience. These regions offer better chances of maintaining food production, avoiding immediate fallout. The southern hemisphere, particularly South America, is less affected by nuclear winter effects. Isolated island nations, New Zealand, Iceland, Solomon Islands, are considered top refuges due to, or likely to be, lower agricultural disruption, strong local food production, and in Iceland's case, geothermal energy. Regions with low population density. Yes, these won't be specific targets. I mean, all of this is just, it really just depends. Like, are we considering a scenario where we have a high altitude nuclear detonation where we're not having nuclear winter? That's one question. Are we having detonations that are specific to targets around the globe that don't trigger total nuclear winter, and they're only kind of affecting their immediate areas, you know, with also the condition that the winds are gonna push some of that nuclear fallout in certain directions? Or are we talking like true nuclear winter where the entire planet is plunged into nuclear winter because of the amount of soot that's kicked up into the atmosphere? Prevailing winds determine where radioactive debris travels. Choosing a location upwind from potential targets is vital. While no location on Earth is guaranteed to be safe from the global long-term effects of a full-scale nuclear winter, some regions are considered relatively safer due to geographic location, low target density, and potential for food production. Yeah, I think all of this is very much conditional on the extent of how many nuclear weapons are detonating, how much soot is kicked up in the atmosphere. If we have a scenario where it's not enough to actually blanket the majority of the planet, I guess, right? But all of these are big if questions. These nations are far from major northern hemisphere targets, have lower populations, and possess strong independent. Yes, I get that. But like, if you get enough soot that it blocks out, enough soot kicked up into the atmosphere to block out the sun across the entire planet, essentially, it doesn't really matter where you're at on the planet. But again, I guess it just depends on how many are actually detonated. If it was like the United States versus Russia, and we just let fly fucking everything, Like, there are video animations on this. Total nuclear war simulation. I want something that's, like, very quick. I want to... Oh, this is just showing the targets. It's not really showing the aftermath. Yes, in simulation in real time. And what the fuck does in real time?
Stand true. Stay weird.
Okay, let me just do this because I don't want to waste my time searching for this. Not finding what I'm looking for. Maybe atmosphere. Atmospheric effects of total nuclear war. Simulation. Alright, I'm not going to find what I'm looking for. Let me just type this in. Okay. In the event of total nuclear war, is the entire planet clouded? Shielded? What am I looking for? Shielded from the sun? It's not really what I'm... Not really the way I want to word it. Total nuclear war blanket the whole planet? Question mark? Ah, damn it. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this question.
Correct me, but I thought it was Hawaii, Greenland, and New Zealand.
Because there are so many targets in Hawaii.
Okay. How do I ask this? Would the entire atmosphere be blanketed in the event of total nuclear war? AI thinks I'm trying to do homework. Yes, the event of total all-out nuclear war, defined as full-scale exchange between major powers, scientific simulation suggests the upper atmosphere would be blanketed by a dense global layer of soot and smoke, causing a severe long-term. The blanket effect is not caused by the explosion themselves, blah, blah, blah. Global spread. Within 1 to 2 weeks, the smoke and black carbon from burning cities would rise into the atmosphere, where there is little rain to wash it out, and spread around the entire planet. Emperor plunge. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing here is that there's a lot of ifs in this scenario, and one of the big ifs is if it's total nuclear war. And I think in this event, they're usually simulating the US versus Russia with the amount of nukes that each has, which I think they both have about 5,000 each. There'd be enough soot kicked up into the atmosphere that I think it would blanket the entire planet. Yeah, so we're talking about 90% of the solar radiation hitting the Earth is now blocked off. So in that event, I don't think there's anywhere on the planet that's safe. But if we consider maybe a more limited scope, where maybe they hit specific targets and they don't release their full arsenal of like 10,000 nuclear warheads across, on each other, then I suppose there's probably zones that are probably safe. That would be my somewhat educated assumption or understanding of what we're dealing with here. Because every time they talk about, oh, this area doesn't have targets, that only matters if you're not considering that you're triggering a global nuclear winter by total nuclear war.
Pacific Fleet.
It would be.
And you're only considering like the
Sorry,
local effects of
And same with
localized
all of
nuclear
Europe.
detonations.
Because I don't, and when I talk about a full-scale nuclear exchange, I certainly in my book, I'm talking about
thousands of warheads.
You're talking about Russia and the United States being involved in a full-scale nuclear exchange.
What's the sequence of events that leads us there? Because you'd think just launching one nuclear warhead would have a pretty big impact. How big are our biggest nuclear warheads in terms of the radius and impact they can
I'm
have?
thinking of the movie War Game, remember in the 80s, which kind of had a visualization of that.
And at that point in time, we had 70,000 nuclear warheads. Now we have 12,300 approximately between the nuclear-armed nations, approximately 10,000 of which are in the U.S. and Russia. So we each have 5,000.
Why do you need that many?
That's my point. That is the point. That was the point that Reagan and Gorbachev began, and it is because of their initial work that the world,
like a dick measuring thing, like not in the most reductive sense, but in the sense of, oh, you got 2,000? Well, I got 3,000, motherfucker. Oh, you got 3,000? I have 4,000. And it just kind of keeps amping up to kind of drive home you better not do anything, because if you do, it's not to be cliche, but it's mutually assured destruction. That's probably how we got to that number in the first place.
has moved in the direction of arms reduction, which I believe is the only hopeful direction that we must move.
When it comes to nuclear strategy, the sense behind the weapon is that the average warhead, I believe, is about 300 kilotons right now. A modern day ICBM can carry about 10 warheads, sometimes between 3 and 10, but they try to minimize the number of missiles by maximizing the number of warheads. So the detonation from a 300...
What he means by that, to be clear, is that these rockets, or these ballistic missiles, would carry multiple warheads on them. And what they do, they shoot up in the atmosphere. As they're falling back down, they'd separate into multiple warheads that are falling back down on the Earth. And so you have less launch vehicles, but they're carrying multiple warheads, basically.
Kilogram detonation is a specific amount of space. I think it's like 50 miles or 110 miles of blast radius and like 15 to 30 miles of fireball. So when you are targeting the MIRV on your destination,
the MIRV,
the multiple independently targeted reentry vehicle, the little revolver in the sky, when you're targeting that, when you're programming that to release, you're not trying to hit the same place with 10 warheads. You're trying to spread your warheads so that the blast radiuses eradicate everything in the footprint. So you need 12,000, 10,000, 5,000 missiles per country. You need 5,000 warheads so that each warhead can cover, 300 square miles, and you can blanket it across multiple strategic targets and completely eradicate your opponent's ability to wage a counterattack.
And Russia are pretty paranoid of the nuclear program in the United States, so they created this dead hand system. What is the dead hand system?
The dead hand...
Before she even says it, my assumption, based on the name, context clues and everything, and based on nuclear strategy, would be if the head of the snake is cut off, in other words, if the head of state is incapacitated, I guess maybe in like a hostile manner, then it's like an automatic switch that, like, in the event that we're taken out, that the leadership is taken out, this shit just gets automatically deployed to take out the opposition. I think that's probably what she's... Let's see what she says.
The system is exactly like it sounds. It's from the Cold War, and it was this idea, the paranoid sort of Politburo was thinking, what if those Americans do a preemptive nuclear strike and kill us all before we even have a chance to launch? We want to be able to make sure that we end the world and kill all of them. That's kind of the idea behind it. And so they came up with this system, which is now known as the dead hand, because you could literally be dead and have it launch anyways. And the way it goes is that there are ground sensors across Russia that would, sense the bombs going off. And this is kind of like...
I'm curious how that technology works, because I would imagine you don't want it to just be like a pressure sensor sort of thing or a vibration sensor sort of thing, because I could imagine that get triggered by seismic activity. Maybe we should just look this up. Maybe not right now, but I mean, I guess there's a few different ways you could you could design something like that. Maybe you have where if you're sensing it in multiple very distinct locations, maybe you can use that as a way to kind of test for false positives, I guess. Or maybe you're testing for vibration pressure and also radiation levels.
Early AI.
Well, let's look it up. I'm kind of curious, actually. Dead hand system. Automated. It functions by monitoring seismic radiation and communication signals. Okay, see, what did I tell you? Seismic would be vibrational, but then it's also monitoring radiation. I'm not sure what the communication signals would entail here, but... Oh, maybe this is... This might be like in electronics, you have the concept of, like a... What is it? Always on... Not always on. There's... Electronics... Initially on versus initially off. This isn't what I mean. Or this isn't how it's what it's actually called, but I'm trying to remember the name. Initially off, powered down, energy efficient. No. Switches. Not witches. Switches. Oh my god. Oh, normally open and normally closed. So this might, maybe when they refer to communications here, maybe what they're monitoring for, because again, if they're talking about dead hand, meaning that the it's automated, it doesn't require input from an operator, then I imagine here what it might be is something like a normally on circuit where you're monitoring for a consistent signal within a certain interval, and if you lose that signal because maybe something was detonated, destroying the facility that usually sends the signal, then the system is like, okay, we didn't get a signal, maybe waits for confirmation, another interval, okay, we didn't get another signal, that triggers another check on the system. We're getting seismic activity, we're getting radiation activity, and we're seeing that this normally open, or I guess it would be normally open, normally closed circuit is now in the open position. It's not receiving signal. And so those things are like, all three of them are being triggered, in which case you're not getting a false positive, and then it activates the system, I guess. That'd be my assumption of kind of how it works.
If you will, the computer would know that and would then launch all of Russia's nuclear weapons, all of them, at the United States, even if everyone were dead.
With time, probability increases, probability of something occurring. And it's funny, there's been a few people in the public eye at the moment that have gone through sort of mental, cognitive decline. They've experienced bipolar and schizophrenia and things like that. I just wonder if one of these individuals who has these nuclear weapons, these 9 men around the world, if they had some kind of cognitive issue, could they in their delirium or whatever, without anybody being able to stop them,
yes, you already know the answer,
tell their army to launch nuclear weapons?
You're not really asking this question. You're asking to have a discussion about
two people that turn the key.
They're following orders.
They're following orders.
I think that your question, the answer might be yes. I think the answer is actually yes.
And what's interesting is, like, there are certain countries' nuclear arsenals that we don't know about. Now, I happen to get my information on the most current nuclear weapon systems from the Federation of American Scientists, has a group of people led by a man named Hans Christensen.
I think one of these, for example, is Israel. I think everybody kind of agrees it's like an open secret that Israel has nuclear weapons, but they officially, publicly don't. Israel, I wonder if they've ever actually admitted nuclear weapons. Israel is widely believed to possess a nuclear arsenal of approximately 90 warheads, with estimates ranging up to 400. So it's basically like an open secret that they most likely do.
That lead a group called the Nuclear Notebook. And they gather the most current information that can possibly be known by anyone and prepare it for the rest of us to read. And it changes every year, and they do a phenomenal job. But for example, they will tell you that we don't really know much about Pakistan's nuclear command and control. We simply don't know. We don't know much about India's nuclear command and control.
Is Russia's command and control, when I was in the silo at least, was still decentralized, which it gave almost autonomous launch decision to the commanders at the silos themselves.
What does that mean?
So in the United States, it takes a validated order to clear a computer system before the controlling officers can launch the system.
So the president has got to say launch, and then
he gives an actual validation code that gets carried in the nuclear notebook. And then any system that validates the same code is now armed to launch. Nobody can just launch.
So the president has what's called sole authority.
Almost like
he
a
doesn't ask
veto.
permission of anyone, not his SecDef, not the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's his alone. He may ask their advice, but it's his decision. He reads in the black book of the inside of the football.
What's the football?
So the football is that satchel that
The
goes around with the
briefcase.
president 24/7, 365, also the vice president. Inside of that is a black book. That's what it's nicknamed. It's called the black book, I was told, because it involves so much death. And inside of that are predetermined strikes for all of our enemies or adversaries who might ever launch against us. So it's not a decision making. They're not sitting around, okay, here's what happened. What do you think we should do? It's, do you want to choose A, B, or C? And do you want to go with subset D, E, F, or Q? It was once described by a man who carried that football as comparable to a Denny's menu.
Each of those line items, I'm going to give it to you in painful detail. Each of those line items is followed by an authentication code. And the authentication code is then put into the football. That authentication code is then sent to every nuclear capable site across the United States and any nuclear capable sites in Europe. The authentication code will only work to authenticate with missiles that have the predetermined target set that was in the black book. Now, the emergency action message, the EAM, that is received by the missile crew, they can't determine what it means. They just get a message, an encrypted message. Then they turn it and then they check the authentication code against a bank of authentication codes that they're given every morning. A whole new bank that recycles, that changes.
A bit of an aside, I used to know a guy that I used to work with who served in, I think it was the Navy. He used to be a nuke, I think is what they call him. That's kind of like the shorthand. If I remember correctly, I think that what he used to do is he worked on one of the nuclear subs. And so these are the submarines that the United States operates all over the globe, and I think Russia has these as well, where it's not publicly known where these are at or at any given time, but they are just all, supposed to be all over the globe in international waters, I guess, with nuclear capability to launch in the middle of the ocean nuclear missiles. And so he used to be on one of those submarines.
Every morning. If the two codes match, only the system knows. The crew does not know. And then the crew will follow the action steps of an authenticated message. And then part of those action steps literally include unlocking a safe, pulling out a plastic wrapped piece of paper that you crack open, and then from within that piece of plastic, you crack out another code. And that code is a specific arming code that will arm the weapon system that you are at. And then you go through the whole that's a huge checklist of items until you get the checklist item that says insert your keys and the checklist item where you have the commander.
One thing that I have wondered for a while is we know that the Soviet Union and the United States have about 5,000 warheads, give or take each, at the height of the Cold War. A big question I've had in my mind a lot is how many of those nuclear arsenals have actually been actively maintained to a standard where they are reliably operational? I make the assumption, and maybe this is a faulty, optimistic assumption, that with all of the turmoil in the Soviet Union and the economic issues that they had and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the reemergence of the Russian government as we see it today, throughout all of that turmoil and everything, did they really maintain their 5,000 plus arsenal of nuclear warheads and delivery vehicles to the standard of operability up until present day? And I don't know. I don't know if anybody has, actually, kind of curious. Let's see if there's any. How many of the Russian nuclear warheads are actually operational today? And then a similar question with the United States. I don't know. Has the United States actually properly maintained all of these? As of early 2025, Russia has approximately 1,700 deployed strategic nuclear warheads. These are considered fully operational precision and intercontinental ballistic missiles at submarine bases with no heavy bombers. Has a total stockpile of 5,500 essentially, which includes those in storage and retired, but 4,300 estimated to be actively operational in reserve. Okay. Interesting. So then, similar question with the United States. I wonder if we have, some estimates on that kind of question. Maintains an estimated 1,700 deployed, and then the total stockpile consists of approximately 3,700, with the remaining 1,900 in reserve. Roughly 1,300 deployed in ICBMs. Approximately 100 tactical bombs are deployed in air bases. Okay. All right. So similar numbers. It seems like.
Of the capsule, count to 3, and then you both turn your keys. That's
And
you're
by
just
the way,
following orders. You're the
everything-
whole time.
Did you ever turn your key?
We turn our keys probably 5 or 7 times a week because EAMs are always coming through, and we never know what they say.
EAMs,
the emergency action message.
And
So they've set that system up so that you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
You're just following
There
orders
can
every
be
day.
nobody who's.
It's like a fire.
I get what he's saying here. He's saying, like, in order to maintain a level of, like, I guess, like, compartmentalization, if this would be the right word, you don't want the operators making those decisions. And so you don't even want the operators to even think in their mind, what is being targeted? Is this the right move? Are we actually doing it, sort of thing? And so you're constantly having them go through the exercise of, like, simulating that they're doing it anyways, so that they're so used to just running through, not only, I guess, so that they have the like the experience to just do it as like muscle memory in the event that it's actually real, but so that they don't even actually know when it's the real thing or not. They're not actually cognitively making that decision themselves or even second guessing it. They don't know themselves whether it's the real thing or not. I guess I think that's maybe what he's trying to say here.
Squad where everyone's shooting, but you don't know who shoots the fatal bullet.
Yep.
And by the way, everything that he just described can happen, not always, but in as little as 60 seconds.
Yeah, we're timed.
And the terrible joke is they don't call them Minutemen. That's the ICBMs for nothing.
Based on everything you know, do you think that if Russia launched a nuclear weapon now, do you think the US would respond?
Not even a question.
But do you think they would even know? Do you not think the president, for
Not even a
example, would
question.
think?
Not even a question.
Really?
Not even a
Do
question.
you not think they would think it was something else? I mean, there's been times in history where they thought maybe that's something else. Maybe we've made a mistake. They hesitate.
I think that your question is valid because it's not truly instantaneous. There are interceptors, there are countermeasures, there are second and third order intelligence sources that could be checked within just a few.
But I think our public out-facing posture is that we project that we're going to treat it with the utmost seriousness. If you do something, we are going to respond to the fullest extent. That is the posture that we want to maintain. I think that's what they're going to get out here.
A few seconds, right? One satellite corroborates with another satellite kind of thing. But all in, you have maybe 7 minutes to decide if you're going to counterattack or not.
7 minutes.
Because that's between when you pick up the first satellite
Information gets
signature
communicated
of a
to the
launched
president.
ICBM or a launched
President
submarine
communicates
weapon,
what he wants
depending
to do.
on whether it's
that
going into the
information
atmosphere
gets
or
sent
whether
out
it's
as a
cruise missiles
EAM, like
coming
he was
straight to the
saying,
shore.
to the operators.
At most, you
and
probably
then
have
they
about 7 minutes before a
perform
counter
the
code,
operation.
counter order has to happen.
Because the nuclear bomb is going to get from one continent to the other in approximately 30 minutes. It's actually, if you do the math like I did, it is 33 minutes from Pyongyang to Washington, D.C., and it's 26 minutes and 40 seconds from Russia to Washington, D.C.
You know, we all kind of know Donald Trump's ideology because he's so public. Do you actually think that he would sit there and see something coming, get the intel in, and he would listen to the intelligence? We just said earlier that he doesn't listen to the intelligence.
He might not. I mean, that's the prerogative of the president, and it's And then, I mean, the other sick part of this, and Annie, you can correct me if any of this is stated, even if we don't react right away and everything is destroyed, we have airborne assets that will launch all of our systems after complete
We
annihilation
have nuclear
of the United
submarines
Okay.
assets as
So
well.
even if we were wrong,
And we
the
have,
submarines
like he
in the
said,
aircraft.
we have nuclear warheads parked in other countries in Europe, and probably in other countries as well beyond Europe, where we can remotely launch these systems.
Sensible still.
That's why we have a triad. Again, this always comes back to the deterrence part of it, which is this is why we must have all of this force, just in case, because all of these war games have been practiced and rehearsed so often.
This all.
But I'm going to tell you a terrifying detail. I interviewed the commander of the nuclear subforces, Admiral Connor, for my book. Not someone who normally talks to journalists.
He probably didn't mean anything this, but the way he was looking at her looked like he wanted to kill her. He probably didn't, but I don't know, it was just a funny look.
When the book published, he rang me up and asked me to have lunch. Not something that often happens to a journalist. I thought, am I in trouble? Okay. I met with Admiral Connor, and he said to me, "You never asked me about my time in the nuclear bunker under the Pentagon." And I said, "Well, how would I have known about that?" And he said he was curious that I had reported that the public does not know how often the Pentagon practices nuclear war. We don't know. Andrew may know. We don't know. It's classified. And what Admiral Connor said to me was, "You never asked me what I was doing in the nuclear bunker beneath the Pentagon, and you never asked me how often we practice preparing to tell the president that he needs to launch." To your question. I mean, I'm at the edge of my seat. And he said, "Guess." And, I started with once a year, right? Because what do you think? I mean, that's like terrifying. And you know what the answer is?
Once a week?
3 times a day.
3 times a day.
They practice 3 times a day telling the president that there's a new...
But then again, you do have to kind of ask yourself how much of this is actually true versus what do they want the public to think to maintain a kind of deterrence posture outward facing. Do they actually practice that 3 times a day? Because it seems to me like you might not have enough time in your day with the other shit that you're doing to actually practice 3 times a day. But then again, what does that even mean? What does practice entail? I don't know.
Nuke coming into shore.
3 times a day. And I said, "Admiral Connor, why do they practice 3
The
times
real
a day?"
answer
He
is we
said,
probably won't
"There are
really
3
know.
shifts at the Pentagon in the bunker." And I think the terrifying point that we're making is to your question, which is a normal human question. Like, wait a minute, someone really wouldn't do this. I mean, you would stop and think, this can't be right. All of that, that's the movies. That's not the Defense Department. That's not the system of nuclear command and control. The system of nuclear command and control is rehearsed for precisely go at
I mean, I
minute
do
7.
believe that aspect.
And
I just
that is
don't know if I believe that they actually do it 3 times a
I
day.
also think that's why we're not moving closer to strategic nuclear war, because you're capable, you're nuclear capable, nuclear ready countries have been doing this 3 times a day, and they all know, what the fuck are we fighting for? If we do this, what's
all
it all
over.
for? Like,
Yeah, it's
we're
all
not
over.
we're not going to win tomorrow. There's not going to be Putin on a pedestal or Trump on a pedestal saying, "We won." Everything will be destroyed.
Mutual assured destruction.
So it makes much more sense for them to hold their weapons and continue
Thank you for
using
that
it
contribution.
as a deterrent, not just a deterrent for nuclear conflicts, but a deterrent like Russia's using it right now. Nobody will get involved in Ukraine, and nobody will support Ukraine incurring further into Russia because everybody's afraid of what if. That's a huge ace in the hole.
Every single one of you watching this right now has something to offer, whether it's knowledge or skills or experience, and that means you have minutes. What are you doing about all this information and how you feel about the global conflicts?
Okay. All right, so I'm getting a little bit tired here. This has been a very long roundtable, very interesting. I genuinely really enjoyed this. I subscribe to this guy's content. I would recommend it to you too, Diary of a CEO. I've seen a few clips from his channel. Seems like he does good interviews and whatnot. I really enjoyed this conversation outside of your normal day-to-day bullshit politics that goes on. But looking at what the other chapters are, who can save the world, the answer to that question is it is probably kind of generic stuff, to be honest. Escaping the polarizing AI, like, it seems more like wishful thinking more than anything else to me. And then preparing for AI deepfakes. I don't know that anybody has answers to these questions. I'm comfortable with just kind of cutting it right there, and that's where I'm going to cut it. That's going to be it for me tonight on this, anyways. I might play some Helldivers a little bit later if I don't crash the fuck out. But that's it for this. So, thank you for tuning in. I see that I have one person watching, and I had a few people that tuned in and caught some of it. So, if you like what you saw, subscribe. But anyways, have